Welcome to the 2018 edition of the Sailing Champions League. This year we kick off in beautiful Porto Cervo for the first semi-final of the season, before moving on to St. Petersburg in Russia, and then the final in St. Moritz, Switzerland. With over 32 teams from all over the world, this season is shaping up to be the most competitive we've ever seen in the Sailing Champions League. So here we are, day 3 of the semi-final, number 1 of the 2018 season of the Sailing Champions League. Welcome, thanks for joining us. My name is Andy Rice, and I will be running the commentary alongside my sidekick, Mark Corky Rhodes. So, Corky, you're an old hand in the Sailing Champions League. You know how it works. Just give us a brief rundown of how these kind of races operate. Pretty straightforward.
So really straightforward, a large number of teams, and so the way the boats operate is we have 8 boats out on the water, different colours. The teams are all out on a floating sort of party island, in the sense where they get rotated off onto the set boats and they will go out. And so we're racing flights, 8 boats in each of those flights, and then the scores all add up together, no discards. So of course, minimum points are going to see you at the top of the table.
And so basically we've got 22 teams out here, and each team representing various countries, they will race approximately 1 in every 3 of the races, and then they will sit out those races on board the good ship Matilda, where they're having a good time, having a few drinks, having a bit of food, a bit of banter, and watching the racing in between. So quite a nice way to spend the day, isn't it?
Well, as I say, this picture just sums it all up right there. So on the left-hand side, that is Matilda. That is that area where those sailors are on board. And then the ribs will take them across to the boats. J70s, all one design boats, so they're equal within measures on the boats, and so it is all coming down to the teams on the water and how they perform.
So in a lot of racing, we're used to the idea of you buying your own boat, you making sure that your boat is as fast as possible. There's a lot of money involved in that, in getting the last couple of percentage points of performance out of your boat. But here, it's down to the organisers to make sure that each of these J70s is identical and that there's no perceptible performance advantage between using the boat with green sails or the boat with black sails and so on. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, very much so. So again, it's just about creating as much of a level playing field as possible. So these teams are all jumping into a boat. It doesn't matter whether they sailed the pink boat from the last race and then jump into the black boat for this time. It's just being able to get straight back in and putting that time on the water. Some of the teams, a lot of experience from the J70s and use them quite regularly. Some of the other teams use different boats within their own national leagues. And so, but the J70, they are very easy and customizable in the sense that the way that you sail it, but certainly with the numbers of teams, the numbers of races due, it's easy to slip up, and that one slip up can see you move up and down the leaderboard quite dramatically.
Well, I'm sure we'll see plenty of those snakes and ladders later on. We're looking at a Lithuanian team, the GVK Plateau 25 Association, skippered by Karolis Janulionis. Just going through a practice tack there, just going through their final pre-race checks. We're about 4 or 5 minutes away from the start of the next heat. Just over 3 minutes now, in fact. Let's take a look at Porto Cervo and the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. What is it about this particular venue that attracts so many of the world's greatest sailors back year after year? Semi-final 1 of the Sailing Champions League 2018 takes centre stage at the prestigious Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. Situated in Porto Cervo on the northern coast of Italy's idyllic island and beautiful holiday destination Sardinia, this venue greets sailors with warm breeze and crystal clear water.
We do believe that many people is coming here sailing because the place and the venue is very unique in the world with the constant permanent sailing from western areas. Our regattas are pretty famous also for the Mistral that are normally blowing here. Today, for example, we have 12 to 14 knots, and the forecast is to maintain this kind of wind for at least a couple of days.
With more than 50 years of club history, the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda looks back with well-deserved pride on its hosting of countless world-class regattas, including now, for the 4th time, the Sailing Champions League. Well, Corky, you get some sense of the history and also what an impressive yacht club, all-round Yacht Club Costa Smeralda is. We had a nice little party last night, didn't we? Up on the top deck by the swimming pool.
Oh, it's just, it's a spectacular place, and you can see why it draws so many people to this venue. Sort of the conditions, you just look at these, the teams out on the water at the moment, the sunshine, the wind, the warm, the hospitality's just magnificent, and exactly that, sort of all the teams met for a welcome sort of dinner, and it was absolutely spectacular. Again, just hosted to the best possible standards, and feel very privileged to be a part of it.
Yeah, awesome night last night. Let's see if the race committee can deliver similar great organisation out on the race course. We've got just under a minute to the start of the next race, Flight 9, Race 3, and beautiful drone shot overhead of how the boats are positioning themselves. Corky, just give us a rundown of what kind of course they're about to race on.
Okay, so we're running a windward leeward course with a gate. So the gate providing a good opportunity for those overtaking manoeuvres and splits within the fleet. They're lining up for the start with 30 seconds or 25 seconds to go here. A starboard end bias, so you can see them bunching towards that committee boat. Very, very strong sort of bias towards that end, so they need to be holding on to that advantage as they line up. A few getting pretty close up, but in these lighter breeze, they're controlling it with now 7 seconds to the start of this first race, Flight 9, Race 3.
And it does look very close as they're just accelerating off the start line. A very good start for boat number 4. And that is CDVB. Circolo della Vela Bari, boat number 4, closest to picture. Very good leeward end start. And as Corky was just saying, it was quite a starboard biased end to the line, and 3 boats already tacking out to the right-hand side. So maybe they perceive there to be a right-hand advantage, or maybe they just got bad air off the other boats and felt like they needed to go sooner than later. Here are the Italians from the Società Canottieri Garda Salò from Lake Garda in the north of Italy, just tacking away. So boat number 6 just tacking away. So 3 boats still sailing on starboard tack. The best of those being one of the other Italian boats, Circolo della Vela Bari, just eking out some distance on boat number 2, which is the red boat from Denmark, and a simultaneous tack. So everyone going out to the right-hand side now.
Oh, exactly that. Sort of the breeze has been over towards this right-hand side of the race course, so you'll see a lot of the teams starting to hug that. The courses are quite tight, so even as they've only just come off that line, they're not far until halfway up this course already. But a little bit of a shift over towards that left-hand side. We're seeing about sort of a 10 degrees lift on that left side, which has enabled those boats to tack back. So the leading boats are coming from this left-hand side. But of course, the boats coming from the right have the right of way with rules to the road. But a great shot here. So whether boat number 4 can cross number 3, we'll see. They're going into attack to prepare.
Doesn't look like they could quite get across, but still very strong sailing by the team from Bari early on, forcing boat number 3 to tack away. That is Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf from France, skippered by Cédric Chateau. But looking back at the start, Corky, and how much they wanted the right-hand end of the line, the committee boat, and yet it's the boat that was furthest down towards the pin end that is the leader right now. It's the boat from Bari. So I wondered if they got a little bit over-obsessed by the committee boat end of that start.
Well, again, it's one of those things you can get really involved in at that bias end. So keen to have that bias end that actually you can lose many of the fundamentals you want from a good start. You need clear air, you need a clear lane, and be able to get out over towards the side of the course you want to be running. And so they weren't affected by anyone. They were able to sail the actual lane they wanted. They held a nice little bit of height. And as soon as that left shift came in, and we're now seeing that favoured left shift again as they approach. And you can see the height angle between the different differences between the boats. And from that left-hand side, that breeze now starting to filter in. We've got about 7.5, 8 knots of breeze across this race course. But certainly, predominantly on this side, this left-hand side has held that stronger breeze.
And look at the gain between the two green-sailed boats, because they were bouncing off each other just not much more than a minute ago. But now boat number 4, the boat from Bari, is now some distance ahead of boat number 3, which is coming up in second place. So that's it doesn't sound like much, but that's a 2 or 3 boat length gain in a very small distance. And on this short course, you can see how short it is. They're already going around the windward mark. That's a very significant gain in a short time, and a great first leg by the sailors from Cervo della Vela Bari.
Yeah, superb sailed first beat, and it's exactly where it is. If you get yourself drawn back into these kind of bundles, these groups, you can see how tightly contested it is as we look on this onboard camera. We look back at sort of the boats trying to squeeze around that windward mark. They're neck and neck right alongside each other. Not a lot of breathing space, but because of that, you'll get a lot of disturbed air. The boats will be going slowly, and this just plays into the boats that have had that early lead out in front.
Yeah, you could see on that onboard shot from the Lithuanian team, a lot of hard work going on, but while they were working hard getting that spinnaker setting, the boats behind them really struggling to get around that windward mark, and the distance is really opening out in a very short space of time. And looking quite a comfortable lead at the moment for the boat with the green sail. Number 4, it's Cervo della Vela Bari from Italy leading this race with quite a tightly bunched pack behind. That's the Bari boat in the lead, just rolling through a jibe there. A lot of controversial discussion every morning by the umpire, by the chief umpire, as to what's allowed in terms of body movement and body positioning through the manoeuvres. They really like to roll these boats around, roll jibes and roll tacks as much as possible.
Well, again, that's it. They are just basically a big dinghy, and so you're still trying to do everything you possibly can to promote any turning of the boat, to create a greater roll, to get that, certainly the Jenica away from that mainsail and give it optimum chance to be able to power up. But again, the ruling of how much you're able to roll that boat, and it's come down, there was a lot of people utilizing and using the shroud on the side of the boat that's holding that mast up on the side to lean back on, which is not allowed. You're allowed to hold on to the hatch just in front of where those sailors are now, and that spinnaker now coming down into that hatch. You're allowed to hold on to that and lean your weight out. So it's been a very careful thing that the judges have had to keep an eye on, to where they're actually holding on to and how much roll is being promoted. But a good drop, nice, safe and controlled. As the Italians lead round that bottom gate, you can see the onboard cameras and how tightly packed this racing is. So, again, if you can get out in front in those early stages, we now see from the distance, 22-metre sort of gap over the lead. That's a nice, comfortable lead on quite a short course.
It is. We're on board with RS-280 from Lithuania, and they are in the middle of the pack at the moment, sailing a fairly solid race. And the number of races they get in, there's no waiting on the system, so every race counts for as much as the rest. There's no big climax at the end, so it's about solid, consistent performances. As long as you can score in the top half of your races, score anywhere between 1st and 4th in each of your races, you're going to do pretty well by the end of these 4 days of competition. Cervo della Vela Bari still leading. And in the left of our picture at the moment, that's the third place boat, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf, leading out towards this side of the course with the 2 blue-sailed boats trailing them. Boat number 1 being, excuse me, that's RS-280, the Lithuanian boat, in our right hand of picture.
So with what we've been looking at on the race course, and identifying sort of where the breeze is. So this is what I'm looking at and using the SAP analytics. And so you can see the race course here and out in front. Cervo della Vela Bari out in front. And you can see the distance that they've got over the race course. The lines either side of it are just the optimized wind and the optimized route. The green one showing the actual optimized route for the sailors to see. So you can now see it flicking towards that left-hand side. And that is just trying to shorten that distance. Of course, you'll see that moving around. And down at the bottom, just on this bottom graph, you can see the wind tracking. So we've got both the strength and the direction. So you can see it's moving around a reasonable amount. And that's where these options are now coming from the boats to break away. In the top left corner, or just underneath the SAP logo, the wind there now 8.3 knots. So we are starting to see that slightly creep up. We're under a short postponement earlier this morning with the breeze within the sort of harbour area, but not a lot out onto where the race course. And so we are seeing some superb conditions out on the water now. But this, if you would like to check out any of the racing, and we'll go into more of this in between races, head to sapsailing.com. Bring up all the regattas. Of course, we're here at the Sailing Champions League semi-final in Porto Cervo. So just click on that and it will bring you through to all of the races. You can click on the races and watch them live exactly as we're doing here. So it's a great way of being able to switch in between the camera. And great, a great shot here from the jury, who are keeping an eye on all of these clubs, frantically trying to gain any possible points.
Now, one of the great things about having a jury out on the water is that you don't have to sit in a protest room at the end of the evening. You come to a place like Yacht Club Costa Smeralda and the Porto Cervo, and the last thing you want to be doing is sitting in a room without windows. Just
much like ourselves.
I wasn't going to say, it's not that I'm bitter or anything. Oh, and a red flag has gone up, so someone around that mark committed a penalty, and someone is going to have to take a penalty spin. So the judges have decided that someone infringed somebody else, and rather than have an argument in the protest room afterwards, someone has to take an immediate spin, and it looks like it's the pink boat that's doing that. Are they going to try and do that with the spinnaker up? Surely they're going to have to get the spinnaker down first. So the pink boat is the Società Canottieri Garda Salos. So one of the Italian teams, not the one that's leading this race, the other team from Lake Garda that started this race very well, is going to have to take a turn, which they seem to be doing with a large chunk of their spinnaker still up.
Yeah, that's a bold move. Sort of, they're big spinnakers on these boats. You would have just got that straight down the hatch, gone that spin, and got on and done it. But when we were looking at, enjoying that camera from the jury, it was a notable side of things that it looked like someone had to stuff it up a little bit, and felt that was the rule infringement as they came into that boat. Whether that was the exact penalty, but exactly how you're saying, these on-the-water jury, fantastic. Well, it's all about deal with the action then and there. You can get straight into the next race. We roll through races so quickly that we couldn't afford to go into penalties. But there we go.
The race win by Circolo della Vela Bari from Italy, skippered by Simone Ferraresi. A very solid win for them. It all comes back to that start where they were the most left-hand boat after everyone was fighting for the committee boat end. And they let everybody else get on with that fight. They picked their pin end or middle of the line start towards the pin end, and look how much they managed to win that race by. Second across the line is the French boat Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf, followed by the what is it? it's the
Regatta
Club boat.
Bodensen, the Swedish team.
Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, the Swiss team.
So Swiss team, Regatta Club Bodensee, coming in third across that line. And where is that pink boat that we saw take the penalty spin? Yet to come into picture. So you can see you really don't want to take too many risks on that race course, because that's the price you pay. If you come in eighth across the line, it's actually, Società Canottieri Garda Salos. So the Italians in this race were first and they were last.
So it's exactly what's fantastic about this kind of level racing is there is no discards involved. That means there is no way to get rid of your worst result. So exactly, crossing the line there, that's a big point score that they wish they hadn't carried away. But again, for the other Italian team, Socoli della Bari, they are up into second place, 1 point behind first. So a great race win. And they've really started to find their form over the last number of flights, with 4 firsts and a 4th over those flights. So seem to be settled in there. You can see the shots here. Now the team's instantly rotating in. So it's a very quick process to get into the next flight. You see the teams already stepping off. They're all ready to go. So we will be underway with racing from that side of things. So there we see.
And just looking at these guys, there's Cieta. What I love about the Italians is you can always tell what they're thinking. So much expression and so much gesticulation, and clearly they're not happy with their performance. And when you look at their previous races, they won their 2 previous races. And then they come last in that one. So you take one little risk, the jury spot you, they give you a penalty turn, and suddenly you're right at the back of the fleet.
Well, the really interesting thing, and this is what sort of, it'll be great to find out their thoughts at some point on it, and I'm sure they'll clearly displeased about it anyway, but was the penalty. It was a really poorly executed sort of penalty. We're trying to do it with the spinnaker up. They were quite late with it. They sort of half did it, and then didn't look like they were really going for it. If you get given a penalty, you just commit into it, get it done, and get back into the racing. And I'm sure if that had been a good penalty turn, no, it wouldn't have been a result to shout about, but it probably would have been somewhere in the middle of the pack at that point.
Maybe it would have saved a point here or there, and those points can all add up and make the difference between a good result or a very average one. Let's have a look at that leaderboard and see how things are shaping up so far. So we've just seen Cervo della Bari win that last heat, and that leaves them just a point behind the overall series leaders so far, Yacht Club Bregenz. So very good sailing by the Austrians, also by the team from Bari, who we just saw. And in second place in that race just now, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf from France, only 3 points back from second place. And then further down in 8th place, you can see the team that we've just been talking about who finished 8th. And look how good their previous 3 scores were. Second, first, and then an 8th, which has tumbled them down the leaderboard, still inside the top 10. And that's important because, from my understanding, there are 14 of the boats that are going to go through from here to the finals in St. Moritz later this August. So not a terrible score for them, but that particular race, really awful.
Well, interesting. Exactly why the leaderboard's still up. You can see they are the only team in that whole leaderboard out of those flights we can see to carry a final sort of a top full 8 points. So it shows how important all these points are going to be and how they all stack up. But exactly how you said it, they need to finish in that top half of the boats to be able to secure their final position. But it shows how tight it is. Again, just to explain, across those top sections, those are the flight numbers rather than the races. So each flight, there is 3 races to enable all of the teams to race, and so only will the leaderboard be complete after they've completed the 3 races within that flight. And so we have just completed flight number 9, so we will be moving into flight 10, which then obviously will consist of 3 races again. And so if you tune in onto sapsailing.com and look at the leaderboard, and you notice that some boats have already started to score in flight number 10 once the racing starts underway, but some others haven't. Of course, that leaderboard will be going to change. So you can click the live update, which is the 2 arrows that create the circle. If you click that and it glows red, then the red numbers as they start appearing on the race will keep that leaderboard live as well. But spectacular shots from where we are, and I'm sure the sailors are enjoying looking back at that. And well, we would love to look out the window at some point, but when we get to look at shots like that, that makes it certainly all the better.
This is our window on the world, and it is a reminder of just what an incredible place we happen to be sitting in. One of the most famous sailing venues ever in the world, and the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, founded by the Aga Khan just over 50 years ago. And where we're coming into now, just what you saw in that last picture, is a sort of another small clubhouse related to the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. The yacht club Costa Smeralda is embedded in everything that goes on in this part of Sardinia and in Porto Cervo, the playground of the rich and famous, they say. So 2:25 to the start, and we are in flight 9 and race 27. Sorry, flight 10. Flight 10, race 28.
So we have, again, that breeze around 8.5, sort of 8 to 8.5 knots. You can see beautiful conditions out on the water, perfect for these J70s. But it shows that sort of how getting off that start line, being in a clear lane, being able to hold that lane and take that first shift is crucial. At the moment, the breeze still flicking around a reasonable amount, and so the opportunities for boats to get, it's narrowed down a little bit. It is still moving, but only sort of 2 to 3 degrees. I say wind speed staying fairly consistent. We again have that starboard end bias on that boat. So again, will we see a little bit of a bundle and people fighting for that much needed sort of bias, or will we see people quite happily to just travel down that line a bit and go for speed?
1:20 to the start. Based on what we saw in the last race, with all these decisions to be made at this crucial point at the start, what would you be doing?
Well, I'd certainly want to. You don't want to just give away the complete bias. It doesn't mean you head straight down to the other end of the line and clear away from it. But I'd certainly, I'd quite like to position myself sort of just down leeward of the pack. Not get yourself into that high-risk position of wanting to be right next to the committee boat, not having that breathing space. Just down bow forward on them and lead that group out off that line. So the breeze in this right-hand phase, so they're going to want to hold on to that starboard tack for a little while and wait for that shift to come in, and then look for that opportunity to come back across the fleet. So we'll see what happens in this race. 25 seconds to go.
We're on board with Hellerup Sail Club from Denmark, skippered by Frederick Berg. Just wiggling that tiller around for the final bit of manoeuvring on boat number 1, just above him. But it's much more evenly spread across the line this time. Not nearly so much of a fight for one end or the other. And who's going to take the pin end this time? It looks like it's going to be boat number 6. GVK Plateau 25 Association, good start from them, from the Lithuanians. Also very good starts for boat number 4. Circolo della Velabari, the winner of the previous race, also looking strong. Not such a good start for boat number 3. That's Hellerup Sail Club. We were on board with them just now, and we saw their pre-start positioning. It hasn't worked out well for them. That's who we're looking at on board with the skipper, Frederick Berg, trying to see what he can find on the right-hand side of the course, because the start didn't work out too well for them. And in these very early stages, it's boat number 4, Circolo della Velabari, winners of the previous race, that are the nominal leaders in these very early stages. But you can see the leaderboard changing all the time right now.
Yeah, tucked up just above them is WSV Hiesbeck, the Dutch team. Again, a great start off from that middle of the line. This breeze now starting to click to the left, so now these boats closest to screen going bow forward. You can see the squeeze coming on from the Italians against the Dutch team there, right in the middle of the screen. We're looking at boat number 4 and boat number 8. Just they're clearly wanting to put that squeeze on. The reason why they're doing it is they want to shuffle these boats off and send them into attack. Exactly that. Now they'll go into attack. So really aggressive behavior on that, but you have to be. These short courses, you force yourself out to one side of the track, all your options are gone. You're reliant on that breeze now favouring you. So actually, they've managed to shuffle the Dutch team off a little bit earlier. So that is WSV Hiesbeck. They've taken that little bit tack, and you can see them starting to shuffle back. But the control now switching to GVK Plateau 25 Association, sort of just going bow forward, because they managed to get that tack in early, take that first shift.
Which boat are you referring to? Is that the dark blue sail?
That's the one, right in the middle of the race course, as we're now sort of flying towards them, just tucked in front on the bow. You can see the bow forward. They've got that breeze. Here we are. They're in a great shot. You can look back towards the bows over in front of them. Very, very comfortable spot for the guys here.
I think we're on board with Regatta Club Oberhofen from Switzerland, skipper by Alan Stettler. You can see the concentration on his face there, putting the squeeze on the light blue boat, the light blue sail, just falling into their bad air now. So looking good for the Swiss there in the middle of picture. And some of the other boats have overstood. So you can see why the Italians on the green sail wanted to force the squeeze on the boat earlier that Corky was referring to. Because this side of the course have all overstood the ley line. They've sailed extra distance that they didn't need to do. And that's all playing into the hands of boat number 1, which is the Swiss that we're on board with now, representing Regatta Club Oberhofen.
This is all going to get quite messy for the boats coming in here on port. So look, there's not a lot of space here. There is going to be some penalties thrown up over in this side there. There is a clear nudge from those boats there. The umpires tucked in the position. Be ready for some flags to fly on that, because there will certainly be some unhappy teams from that position. And that's exactly what happened. They overlaid it. They came in, but the difference there was sure to see some of the penalties fly from there, because there was not the space for 2 of those boats to squeeze in on that point. So it'll be interesting to see what the umpires make of it.
A bit of a slow set there from boat number 5, the pink boat that finished last in the previous race, Società Canottieri del Garda. But it's the Oberhofen team from Switzerland with a dark blue sail, the number 1 that is number 1 in this race right now, followed by the light green Spinnaker. But that's an all-clear sign, an all-clear flag. No penalties committed around that windward mark. So they're not as naughty as you thought they were, Corky.
No, there's obviously more space than what they felt. They felt that by tacking in on that mark, they felt there wasn't that infringement, and they felt there was the space to go through that. Now you see those boats taking that jibe out, looking to track back down into the middle of the course. Very comfortable for Regatta Club Oberhofen, the closest to us here in the bottom right of the screen. And again, the reason why these guys jumped out in front was they came off a nice clear start, but were able to take that first shift when they wanted it. And we saw the Italians really trying to force that position on there and trying to get the boats to tack off. But again, it shows a start comes down, and lots of people talk about clear air being important and a clear lane. Yes, they're all fundamentals of having a good start. But being in control and being able to take that first shift, having the options to take it, actually plays out the most fundamental. So now the jib sort of unfurls. They're getting ready for the drop. The kite comes down. Good teamwork. They favour this closest mark. They want to head up towards the left-hand side of that race course. Nice tight rounding.
Looking very easy for the Swiss right now, skippered by Alan Stettler, going out to the left-hand side of the course. But the next boat, the winner of the previous race, opting to go around the opposite side of the gate, out to the right-hand side, and still trying to get the last bit of that spinnaker down. So a bit of a sloppy drop by Cervo della Velabari, but still in clear air for them and leading the bulk of the fleet, most of the fleet opting for that right-hand side. So quite an even split out of that leeward gate. So we've got 3 going out to the left-hand side, 4 going out to the right-hand side. Regatta Club Oberhofen, they can get across to the other side and make sure that they stay ahead of their closest competitor, the Italians, Cervo della Velabari. But it does look like the Swiss, now that they've tacked, are still holding their lead very, very comfortably. Alan Stettler, very experienced sailor in his late 40s, the Swiss champion in the 420, the 470, the 49er, a top match racer, Melges 24 sailor. There's not much that Alan Stettler hasn't done. So a man of great experience, and played the tactics on that first beat to perfection. A great start followed up by a very good decision to tack when they did, which has all played into their hands. Just looking at a roll tack coming from Burgenländischer Yacht Club from Austria, skippered by René Mangold. We haven't had much to say about them so far. Fighting in the middle of the pack against GVK Plateau 25 Association. And every maneuver is expensive. And one of the things that the Swiss will have managed to get away with is that this will be a 2-tack beat for them. The Swiss on the left of our picture will be going into attack fairly shortly, and it will be their last tack of this particular race. And it's really difficult to see anybody being able to attack Regatta Club Oberhofen at this stage.
No, exactly that. Just looking into sort of the analytics and the speed going in and out of the tacks is that they've managed to hold a fairly steady pace going into the tacks, being just above 5 knots and still coming out with the similar sort of speeds. When we've seen a lot more of the drops in between the races, in between the manoeuvres, sorry, and that's exactly where sort of we're talking about these gains and losses across that. So. Really interesting, one design boats, but again, you can maximise the amount of speed that you go into them, and it all comes down to the way you're sailing that boat. And so far, in control from mark number 1, and still in control, Regatta Club Oberhofen.
And a good regatta also by the boat that we're on board with just there. It was Hellerup Stad Club from Denmark in 3rd place in this race, but breathing down their neck are the other Italian boat from Lake Garda. The pink sail of number 5, attacking them for 3rd place. It looks like 1st and 2nd are wrapped up at this stage, with Regatta Club Oberhofen leading Circolo della Velabari. And interesting to think, Corky, that Circolo della Velabari, they've won the first race, they've come 2nd in the next race. They're going to be in a very strong position in the overall standings if they manage to hold on to 2nd in this race. But plenty of changes could still take place behind them. Not much to choose between the boats in the middle of the pack.
Well, this is the fascinating thing about sort of the racing, is that they're out here, they're in 2nd place. We've been talking about that Italian team. They are in 2nd overall at the moment. But again, the 2 teams that they're very closely vying for in the points, if not 3 teams on the leaderboard, aren't racing in this race. So until they've raced their flight, will they define on where they are overall? And so that's what's really tricky for these sailors. It's a matter of just going out, being as consistent as you possibly can, and defining yourself right at the front of the fleet. And that's exactly what these guys are doing at the moment. But Regatta Club at Oberhofen will be very pleased with this, and this another race win. Again, just starts to allow them to creep back up towards that board. Again, it is the top 14, 15 boats that go across to the final, so it's just securing those places. But again, being confident, laying that down, allows all the competitors to start to sweat a bit.
Well, I would imagine that the foredeck crew on Regatta Club Oberhofen is starting to sweat, because in the space of the last few seconds, the Swiss, for some reason, did an awful lot of jibes and a lot of high-fiving now. They're obviously very happy about that. And a fairly comfortable win for the Swiss ahead of Circolo della Velabari, winner of the previous race, 2nd in this race. And we've talked about consistency, but let's just see who's going to get the nod for 3rd across the finish line. It's an absolute photo finish, but if you were going to ask me, I would say it's gone to Hellerup Sail Club. It looks like our scoring system from SAP agrees with that. So they just managed to hold on against the Italians from Lake Garda. The Danish just sniggling 3rd ahead of the Italians. And it's a close one also for 5th and 6th place. And in that particular case, it was WSV Heesbeek from the Netherlands that sneaked 5th place.
And that shows, again, it all comes down to that finish line. So they all started packed together. And again, coming into that finish line, it is being separated by mere millimetres by the poles going across that line. And that's exactly it. So to that one extra point can change everything on that leaderboard. So
couple of photo finishes there. And a bit of a laggard there, the purple boat of GVK Plateau 25 Association from Lithuania. A clear last place for them, but a very clear first place for the Regatta Club Oberhofen from Switzerland. And I guess this is not that dissimilar, even though it's open sea. It's maybe not that dissimilar to sailing on a Swiss lake. Fairly flat water. Light winds. I mean, that's classic sort of Swiss sailing conditions, isn't it?
Very much so. As they sort of, you can see exactly that out on the water as the teams now swap over, and we can see the Swedish team
trying to get all the weight off the boat that they possibly can by whatever means necessary. The lighter the better, doesn't it?
Well, anything helps, doesn't it?
Better out than in.
It's one way to put it. So, but as I say, the conditions out on the water, we have got spectacular conditions, but exactly that. Some of the teams very used to this. Some of the other teams from the national teams all sailing in very different locations. And that's, again, what's going to be very, very different going forward to the next semi-final in St. Petersburg for the teams that then face there with the tidal conditions that you can be faced very close within the city, very shifty, and then moving across to the final in St. Moritz. It's three very different locations and throw different curveballs at all of the sailors. So very interesting to see how the sailors get on here. But it is the conditions that I'm sure many of, certainly the Swiss, are enjoying out there at the moment.
And St. Moritz is very, very likely to be a light one for the finals in at the end of August. So every bit of racing that they're doing in these light conditions here in Porto Cervo is likely to be very good practice for the conditions that they encounter in St. Moritz.
Well, again, we're having a fantastic time watching the racing. The sailors are enjoying it and so on. But it'd be lovely to hear your thoughts. And there's ways of course, following what we're doing. I'm sure if you are joining us, you will be with us on the YouTube channel, on the Sailing Champions League, and watching us live. But again, we would love to know your comments. And so there we are, facebook.com/SailingCL. And just drop your comments in underneath the post here. You can also, it'd be great to see some of the pictures of where you're maybe watching the Sailing Champions League, whether you're at a club, one of the teams then that are here representing your club, whether you've got a big group of you all there enjoying a few beers and having a nice time. We would love to hear about those comments. And of course, here we are in the studio. We'd love to know exactly what you're up to, where you're watching it. And if you've got any questions, of course, pop them up onto Facebook and we'll do our best to answer them. But plenty more racing on cue. The sound signal to get all the boats ready for this next race. We are in flight 10. So we've done a phenomenal amount of racing already, but the team's all swapped over. The flags are all there. 3 minutes 20 to the start.
It's very fast turnover, isn't it? When you think that people have hopped off one boat onto a rib and a new set of crew have hopped onto that boat already. It's a very slick turnaround time.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's just to make sure that they can get these racing through and through. As that picture shows, the drone shot's ideal. That boat over towards the left-hand side, the large boat, that's Matilda, where all the sailors are camped out and getting a little bit of shade. And then they're transferred onto ribs and ferried out, ready for that flight. So it's a quick changeover. The sailors jump onto the boats, bar changing the flags on the back of the boat, which represent their club and allow us to identify that a lot clearer. Then they're straight into racing. The same course was set up, a windward leeward configuration with a gate and just 2 laps. So straight up and down, back up, and a final run straight through to the finish line. So 8 knot breeze, 8.5 knot breeze across that race course. Slightly shifty, but we're set for another great race.
And so we got some new players that we haven't yet seen on the show so far today. In boat number 1, on the right of picture, Yacht Club de Monaco, a first-time participant in the Sailing Champions League, but with a very strong team. They've got some very good 49er Olympians on board from France, and they're skippered by the very experienced Francois Brenac, just rolling through a very neat, smooth roll jibe. I expect big things from these guys, and so do they expect it from themselves, but they're struggling with the starts. 3 OCSs, 3 over the on-course side, starting too soon out of 8 races was the situation when I spoke to those guys yesterday. And Corky, you really can't afford to be starting over the line more than once or twice in these races. If you start to make a habit of it, you don't have a chance of doing well in this kind of competition.
No, we always talk about in sailing that if you don't have an OCS, then you're not pushing the start hard enough. Well, 3's a little too hard. And exactly that, with no discards available, so no opportunity to take that loss away. It's a big hit on and carrying 3 big, heavy scores. That's not going to be something that's going to set them up. But we can see the bunch up towards that committee boat end again, starting to put the risk on in this bottom right corner. You can see them circling in. They're going to be in dirty air. They're in a second row position. looking for those boats to sort of move out the way. But in a way, you're not in control of your start here. You're waiting for those other boats to create that opportunity for you. So
if I was the race committee officer, I'd be a bit offended by how everyone is so favouring the right-hand end, the committee boat end. I'm thinking, surely I didn't set the line that badly, and I suspect that he didn't. I think there's opportunity further down this line, but they are really fighting for that committee boat end. Just 8 seconds to go, and the leaders have really come in a little bit too soon. They got no acceleration room left, except for boat number 7, who is the furthest boat down to the end. It looks like boat number 5 might be over early. So certainly there's an individual recall flag that's gone up, and Cape Crow Yacht Club in boat number 5 have really made a terrible mess of that. Boat number 1, Yacht Club de Monaco, well, they've got a history of getting OCS starts. Let's see if that flag comes down when Cape Crow Yacht, yes it does. So everyone else is clear. So the Swedes have had to go back and restart. They've got a lot to do. But Yacht Club de Monaco, the 3-time OCSers, have this time absolutely nailed the start. And boat number 1, I would say, is leading this race right now.
Well, it's exactly that, is that we're talking about sort of going for that bias end of the start line, but actually it's about getting off, having a clear run, getting yourself firmly up and around that mark in those top couple of boats, rather than getting yourself bunched in. And we're seeing, as long as you come off with a clear lane, most of the boats that are actually leading off this fleet are coming off that mid part of the lane, holding a nice sort of good bit of speed off that lane, got that bit of height, but again, it comes to that first shift. So we've seen boats tacking out. Most of them are tacking out because they're just trying to clear a little bit of space, bit of clearer lane. But as soon as that first shift comes in on this left-hand side, we're starting to get it now. These boats are approaching over towards this left side of course. We'll start to see them go now. But now in this position, it's all going to be about who goes first. So there's that first
boat number 7, APCC Nantes from France, skippered by Simon Berthaud. They're going to hope that the other boats on their side of the course don't tack on top of them, but unfortunately that's exactly what Yacht Club de Monaco does, and they're in the controlling position, giving bad air to the team from Nantes, and a very solid position to control the race already in these early stages by Yacht Club de Monaco, who, if they've got their ley line correct, are going to be looking in a very strong situation. APCC Nantes, I fear for them in boat number 6 on the left of picture that they are over the ley line and they're going to be sailing extra distance that they don't actually need to sail.
No, they look certainly high up on this line as we've got from the analytics. And so they'll either be starting to crack off a little bit and just ease those sails, go for that extra speed and try and roll into that. But again, a dangerous position to come in. We taught them, we've already seen what happens when a penalty is applied in the previous races. It can send you straight to the back of the fleet. So actually adding this kind of risk into your racing is not going to be something you want to do, certainly at that first turning mark. For these guys on board here with Yacht Club Monaco, they had a great position, came off that line, were in nice and controlled. Again, you mentioned about their start, so they'll be pretty pleased they got away with that start and were happy with it, but they are in control. Lots of experience on board, in a nice position, and were happy to take that tack and lead in from this left side. This is where we've seen a lot of the leaders come from, that midsection off that start, out towards that left, take that first shift in. Here they go, prepping for that first tack. They've got
right on the ley line. Yeah, so maybe even the leaders have slightly overstood the ley line, but it doesn't matter because they are around in the lead. Yacht Club de Monaco holding a slim lead ahead of the yellow boat just behind them, which I believe is it's Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf from France. So 2 French crew leading ahead of Yacht Club Bregenz in 3rd place. But it's not a comfortable lead here. And the question is Yacht Club Monaco, are they going to be able to jibe when they want to? Or are they going to be controlled by Club de Voile Saint-Aubin in the yellow spinnaker?
We can see how tightly packed it is. It's sort of trying to keep that clear air, looking for that opportunity to jibe. Looking at this, a great shot from the drone, looking down at that course, that actually it's fairly skewed to one side. You need to hang on, that you can't jibe out too early. They do like to soak, but the gap is there. The overlap is there. And what we're talking by the overlap is you can see the bowsprit on the French boat, the yellow, neon yellow boat. You can see the bowsprit, which is that black pole holding onto that Jenica, just crossing the back of the boat in front, Yacht Club Monaco. And because of that, it's forcing them there. Great shot from on board. There is no opportunity to jibe. They are in the commanding position. So now the jibe will start to come in. They soak low. Now Yacht Club Monaco will want to try and just go a bit further so they can come in at a higher angle to this gate. And that's going to be their chance. But that's just forced them that little bit further on that racecourse.
And the question is, have they overstood the ley line? Were they forced to do that? And look at this turning into a match race between these two. I mean, so early on in the race, is this going to play into the hands of the boats behind? But these two boats really sailing very aggressively against each other. A lot of manoeuvres, and I wonder which side of this gate that they want. At least they have the choice of a gate. I suspect we're going to see a split. But look at Yacht Club Bregenz coming back in. So the two leaders have got so caught up in each other that they've allowed the purple boat on the right of picture to get back into the race. Yacht Club Monaco was leading around the top mark, and now Yacht Club Monaco, who we're on board with now, have dropped down to, I would say, to third place. Nominally, they're still in the lead on our leaderboard. I don't agree with it. I think that Yacht Club Monaco would say that that was a loss down that run.
Well, we see them going round that gate at exactly the same time as Yacht Club Bregenz, but that's what seems crazy about it. Getting yourself into such a tight lock battle with somebody else in such a short fleet. Again, some of these teams, Yacht Club Bregenz, they are in the lead overall, over the leaderboard. And to just get so enrolled into that fight there, that seemed crazy just to let them get away with that. So
I felt that the aggressors were more the boat on the left of picture, just looking at going into attack. Boat number 3, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf. They took the fight to Yacht Club Monaco to the point where the Monegasque team couldn't actually ignore what was going on. I mean, it was very aggressive match racing by Club de Voile Saint-Aubin, but it seems to have paid off. The unfortunate thing for Yacht Club de Monaco is it's brought Yacht Club Bregenz back into the fight, although Yacht Club Bregenz is out to the far right. And so far, as far as I can recall, Corky, I don't think we've seen anyone come out of the right-hand corner of this racecourse in particularly good shape. It seems to me like the left tends to be a little bit stronger.
Well, exactly that. We've seen sort of this breeze. It's in a very stable format, sort of, and this is one thing that we see quite a lot of here in Porto Cervo, is that the breeze sitting fairly stable. It flicks around a few degrees, which offers these opportunities for attack, certainly on a short course. But at the moment, a lot of the favouritism of that race course being towards this left-hand side. We've got the mark just under the leaderboard in that top left of picture. And so you can see these boats closest to picture a long way out towards this left-hand side as the umpire's now on board with them. You can see tracking these boats coming in on port to keep an eye on where they come in. The boats now approaching from that right-hand side. So Yacht Club Bregenz now taking that starboard bit. Look like they've made a gain on Yacht Club Monaco, which they have. And that was all down to exactly that bundle and that match race. But again, they're starting to close the gap on the French team as they come up to this final upwind leg, but very, very tight from those lead 4 boats.
Yeah, so having said that the right hasn't tended to pay, it looks like it's done fine for Yacht Club Bregenz on that particular leg, and not much to choose between whether you went left or right or not. But at the moment, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf just clinging onto the lead, just ahead of Yacht Club Bregenz, with Monaco having to settle at this stage for third place, and the 4th boat breathing down their neck. There's very little to choose between the top 4 right now. So in the previous 2 races that we've looked at so far today, there's always been a breakaway leader. That is not the case this time round. And will Yacht Club Bregenz, number 6, the purple sail in 2nd place, try and give a bit of that dirty air medicine to the French in the lead, because that's what the French did to the Monaco team the previous time round. But they're pretty much nose to tail as a whole fleet here. Really barely any daylight between any of these boats right now.
No, and that's it. It's just trying to get that position, trying to force that position where you've got that little bit of speed to either run slightly lower, get that bow forward so that there's an overlap. So there we're looking straight in on the lead 2 boats. There's a bit of breathing space between them. There is no overlap at the moment, but that's exactly what Yacht Club Bregenz are trying to do. They're trying to soak a little bit low. And what we mean by soaking is just sailing a slightly lower angle. When you sail that slightly lower angle, the breeze and the boat speed is slightly slower, but you're trying to minimize the distance to the next mark. And certainly for that attacking position, so chat on board from the lead boat here. Club d'Ivoire Saint-Auban-Elbeuf. You can see the looks from all the team looking out the back of the boat, looking for when they're looking for that jibe. When are they going to take that jibe in? It's to the finish line, so you want to be able to come in at a reasonable angle, but any distance additional sailed. And we'll see a strong attacking, aggressive move probably from Yacht Club Bregenz, as they will probably look to jibe straight on top of them and give them that dirty air, look for a better jibe. Certainly looks like the team on board are looking, twitching now at that position and trying to soak low to get that early jibe in.
Pauline Courtois facing backwards, looking for that move. And there is the move from Yacht Club Bregenz. And so now Cedric Chateau about to roll into a jibe. And it's very close across this finish line. But the French just hold on ahead of Yacht Club Bregenz. So a very, very good sail there by Club d'Ivoire Saint-Auban. But also interesting to see the high fives from Yacht Club Bregenz in second. Yacht Club Monaco, leaders of this race, having to settle for third, just ahead of boat number 5. Which is Cape Crow Yacht Club. A good comeback by Cape Crow Yacht Club when you think, Corky, that they were over the line at the beginning and had to go back and restart. That's really quite impressive. But why are they doing some kind of turn right on the finish line? That's very strange. Putting themselves in the way of some of the other boats that are still to finish. I'm not quite sure what Cape Crow Yacht Club were up to. I wonder if there's another part of the story to be told there as to why they would do that manoeuvre and potentially get in the way of some of the other boats when there was no need for them to do that.
Looking at what they're doing now, looks like they're coming back through the line, or it's not making a lot of sense whether there was a penalty handed out and then now doing the penalty turn, they had to return back onto the course side to do the penalty. We'll try and get some clarification from that, but it looks like they're certainly on board having to run a penalty and come back through the finish line there. So,
having done all the hard work and got back into 4th place from being dead last, it looks like they copped a penalty right on the finish and had to do another penalty turn, so they do indeed end up in last place.
Well, you can see them chatting to the umpire there, and the umpire just on the rib there. They're clearly unhappy about that and something that's happened. So the umpire, again, we'll find out there was something clearly out of picture that tripped them up. They broke a rule and then returned them back onto the side. So, as you say, all that hard work and suddenly a mistake happened. And this is actually what this racing's all about. It's about minimising risk. And so we go back to that Yacht Club Bregenz as they went across that line, the high fives. You know, you'd think they've already won it. It's not a matter of that. That second place holds them 1 point at the top of the leaderboard. And it's just that consistency of just securing constant, consistent results throughout. And at the moment, they sit at the top of the leaderboard, and they'll be very comfortable with that because they know the conditions out on the water. They know how easy it is to pick up a penalty, misjudge a start. Any of these things can just flip it on its head. So all the umpires all trying to have a chat and trying to gauge all their notes on what happened, explaining the sorts of situations and just referring that they're all happy with that. They've got a tough time out on the water from back-to-back races, and these are the guys always in the firing line if someone's not happy with a call.
Yeah, pretty hard to stay popular as an umpire. You're always going to upset somebody. And you can see them using their hands to talk through the various manoeuvres that they've been watching in that previous race. And we're looking at the only all-female crew in this regatta, representing Denmark. It's the Kongelige Dansk Yacht Club, the Royal Danish Yacht Club, skippered by Trina Paludan. 5 women. Typically, it's 4 men on the other boats, but 5 women because it's all about making up a certain crew weight. There's a maximum crew weight that on keelboats people like to tend to sail up to the limit of, because heavier weight in the crew means more rising moment, means more power that you can extract out of the sails. So the women, 5 of them to 4 of the men on most of the other teams. But you can be whatever makeup of male and female and whatever else you want to be, Corky. You can. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It's open to all comers, and it's just a matter of making sure that you you come in under that maximum crew weight.
Exactly that. It's a crew weight, and that defines whether you go for 4 heavier people or whether you go for 5 slightly lighter people, whether you mix it up. It's entirely down to how the club feels. And so, you know, it's fantastic. There is an all-female team, though, and doing well. They're battling it out with everyone, and so we are going to see how they get on in flight number 10. But it's also a little bit of a shame that we haven't seen as many females this year in the actual Sailing Champions League, or certainly this semi-final. And as I say, it's a fantastic boat, the J70, for the adaptation of being able to have a really great neutral playing field for all of the clubs to come through. And that's exactly it. It's a shame there's not a bit more of a representation of that throughout the Sailing Champions League. But we do hope to see more potentially in the next semi-final, and certainly making it through to the final.
Well, we've got women sailors competing in the Volvo Ocean Race at the moment. We've got 50-50 gender equality in the Olympic classes for Tokyo 2020. So that's the direction that things are travelling in. And so I'm sure we'll see more women coming into the Sailing Champions League. Who will be the next winner of the Sailing Champions League? It's far too early to tell. We're only at the halfway stage of the first of 2 semi-finals this year, as you've just seen. We're in Porto Cervo. There's going to be another one in St. Petersburg, Russia, all culminating with the final. 32 teams in St. Moritz in Switzerland at the end of the summer, at the end of August. And we can expect a fairly light airs competition for the finals. So the kind of conditions that we have now, with 50 seconds to the start of Flight 10 Race 3, all good practice for the final.
So 40 seconds, so you can see very similar tactics going on. Again, looking at this race course, still a committee boat bias line, but we've seen many of the front running teams coming out from the middle part of the line, taking a little bit of advantage from that starboard end bias, but not getting too enthralled in that. You can see how tightly packed the boats are, because you can't afford to get that on course side and be over that start line. So you can see them bunched together. You can see how quickly, there's not a lot of space. Number 1 shut out at that far end, tight for the boats as they line up. But there's definitely going to be a couple of boats high up on that line, or if they've squeezed
I was worried
away.
about boat number 2, but they got away with it. There's no individual recall. So it looks like Regatta Club Bodensee from Switzerland have got an extremely good start. And we're on board now with the all-female team representing Kongelige Dansk Yacht Club from Denmark, rolling into an early tack. But yeah, you mentioned, Corky, just now, boat number 1 got completely shut out on the wrong side of the committee boat. So an absolute disastrous start by the Slovenian crew. JK Aurora, skippered by Hinko Golias. Really bit of a schoolboy error by the Slovenians there.
Well, again, it's the risk. It's fine if you're willing to punch it through that. You've got a longer race course to potentially get yourself back in. But with any kind of starboard bias, getting yourself wedged up on that windward side, there's no room in by that committee boat. You can see how costly that's been. Here they are on the right of the picture. way back from the rest of the fleet, and that was just a real schoolboy error in the sense of being up on that committee boat end. It's what we call a cowboy zone because you haven't really got any options bar barging in at the committee boat or peeling back out, and if that gap's not there, you're not in control of it. You're reliant on all the other boats to allow that gap. Unfortunately, that gap wasn't there, and it sees them sunk to the back of the fleet and with some distance away from the rest of the fleet.
So we know we don't want to be boat number one. Looking at the rest of the fleet right now, Corky, who would you want to be? Looking at the bunch of boats as they sail out on port tack to the right-hand side.
Well, there's some good boats that have got out towards that right early. As I say, they've had a nice little bit of breeze. But again, the boats that you'd want to be in that middle side is at Regatta Club Bodensee. They're in a nice position. They've come across in that middle section. We always see that right-hand side start to suffer a little bit on that lighter breeze. And the breeze stays with these boats coming in from that left-hand side a little bit more. But again, getting the jump out that middle part of the line. And also Yacht Club at Scheveningen, they coming in from that left-hand side as well. So this is going to be very tight in by that mark, but I think the lead boats will come from that left side, and that's exactly where those front two boats are.
So at the moment, it is still very tightly bunched amongst the top few, and I think that Regatta Club Bodensee has the advantage at the moment, but it's very difficult to say. And Yacht Club Scheveningen from the Netherlands also doing extremely well. It looks to me like JK Aurora, who are way at the back in boat number one, have actually made up a bit of ground and are getting back into the rest of the fleet because the front of the fleet is so tightly bunched. We're on board with Segel- und Motorboot Club Überlingen from Germany, and they are sailing extremely well.
Yeah, great position coming in. You can see, actually, very interesting that they've all racked up a lot earlier, but that dirty air from the back of the sails, so disturbed air that's creating the sail, has given that opportunity for boats to get back in.
Regatta Club Bodensee from Switzerland leading around the front mark, and it's very tightly bunched behind them. Back on board with Überlingen, and a nice hoist for them and a bit of distance on the boat behind, who got a fantastically good hoist. Really very strong early set by the purple boat just behind them, and also an important bit of depth. So difficult for Überlingen to be able to protect on this on the angle that they are, with the way that the purple boat has managed to get down on the inside of their track.
Exactly that, a great sort of hoist from that situation, a jibe out there from Dutch team. But interesting, on that onboard camera, you could see the crew member on the main sheet, but keeping their eye at an angle where the helmsman didn't have to look back, could sail the boat, but realised where in angle they were. They were just holding their arm out just to identify where that overlap position was. And that's what it's all about, being able to identify that overlap. The good hoist being able to soak low. Regatta Club Bodensee here got a little bit of breathing space out in front of the Dutch team at Yacht Club Scheveningen. They're in the green boat, and you can see a little bit of breathing space starting to form from these boats there. And now the actual distance comes up from the SAP Analytics, 25 meters breathing space. And on the short course, we've seen that being a nice, comfortable shot. We'll probably see them taking this closer end mark again and favouring this left side of the course. That's what we've seen has been the choice from many of the other racers. The breeze we still have seen starting to creep up. We're starting to see a bit more like 9 knots across this race course, which is lovely. So we got a good bit of breeze there. But again, the actual movement across the race course, we've still got about 10 degrees of shifts moving around that race course, but steadily moving from one side to the other.
Very straightforward rounding for Regatta Club Bodensee, and I think this is the first time that we've seen a race leader choose to go round the right-hand side of the mark. And I don't think there's much to choose between these two marks, so it's a matter of the kind of positioning that you took down the run. It's Überlingen that takes the left-hand side and is looking very strong, leading out to the left at the bottom of our picture right now. Boat number 6 forced to tack away. That is the Finnish boat, Åländska Segelskapet from Finland. Very strong performers in past Sailing Champions League, so we can expect good things from them. And we're on board here. Well, we're certainly looking at Überlingen. And Tino Mittelmeier, very, very strong performer, knows exactly what he wants. You ask Tino Mittelmeier a question and he gives you a straight answer.
Well, that was it. Sort of, I'm sure we'll see from the highlight clips. And again, if you'd like to see them, you can head over to the Facebook page. But we will flick through them at some point as well. And again, the answer was just so detailed. Knew exactly what was happening on that race course, exactly where they wanted to be and how they wanted to perform. And that's exactly why he's a great competitor. There was a little bit of bias on that gate mark to the further mark away, which is where we see Regatta Club Bodensee make that slight gain on that, but actually still there's pressure sitting in this left side. So very interesting to see these boats as they come back towards the top end of the race course. This will be the final time for running back down. That will complete flight 10 as well, and so give us a complete overall leaderboard. But it's amazing to see the top 5 boats at that leaderboard all starting to settle down and secure their solid places and keep themselves out in front.
Well, Ubelingen has been forced to go underneath the Dutch team of Yacht Club Scheveningen. And so it looks like the Dutch are in second at the moment, just going into attack. Back on board with Tino Mittelmeier and Ubelingen now in third place in this race, just looking over his shoulder to see when to take the tack up towards the top mark. The crew going through, roll tacking that boat. Tino Mittelmeier getting the main sheet back on and on their final approach to the top mark. And it's a tight battle between the Germans and the Dutch for second and third. But for the Swiss, Regatta Club Bodensee hoisting their spinnaker way ahead of the rest of the fleet. I say way ahead, it's only 40 meters. But in terms of the kind of short course racing we're looking at, 40 meters looks like a lifetime. This is an extremely comfortable lead for Bodensee, sailing on very Swiss style, Swiss lake style conditions here on the open waters of the Mediterranean. And at the moment, a good hoist by boats second and third. Yacht Club Scheveningen from Netherlands staying in front of Ubelingen from Germany. So a good battle there between second and third. And Åländska Segelsällskapet from Finland in fourth place at the moment, ahead of the women representing the Royal Danish Yacht Club. And a little bit more of a gap between the different boats compared with the previous race that we saw, where they were really at this stage of the race still nose to tail. But there's no taking this race away from the red boat with the number 2 on the sail, Regatta Club Bodensee from Switzerland, skippered by Julian Flessati, and a very solid sail by a young sailor who's represented his country in many different classes, 420, 470, Plateau 25, laser, and even the International Moth. So sailed all kinds of boats, including the hydrofoiling International Moth. So when he sailed at that speed, it must be like sailing in bullet time in the relatively slow sailing of a J70 keel boat. His crew looking over their shoulder, just making sure that they've got everything under control. Apart from Julian Flessati sitting at the back of the boat, the rest of the crew up forwards around the mast, trying to keep the weight forwards, keep the bow down and keep the transom out of the water. The Swiss just crossing the finish line for an extremely comfortable lead. What was a 40-meter lead at the top has stretched to a 62-meter lead by the finish. And coming down in second place, it's going to be the green sail of Yacht Club Scheveningen from the Netherlands, who look like they're going to get second place. Boat number 4 just crossing ahead of boat number 5, which is the German team of Segel- und Motorboot Club Ubelingen, coming in just ahead of number 4, fourth place, boat number 6. Which is the Finnish team of Åländska Segelsällskapet. And the Danish women finishing in amongst the pack. I think they managed to get 5th place in that race. And somewhere at the back is Wassersportverein Hermelingen from Germany. So not a particularly impressive race by them. We didn't have a lot to talk about Hemmerlingen in that race, but the German crew not doing so well in that race. So that brings us to the end of Flight 10, and at some point we will come up with a leaderboard which will be a very good representation of how things stand at this stage, because until each flight is completed, until each team has done all its races in any given particular flight, we don't really know what the comparative scores look like. So let's take a look at that leaderboard. Corky, how are things looking now?
Well, you can see how tight the points are. So the total points over to this final right side. 1 point separating the lead two boats, but Yacht Club Bregenz, a solid consistency throughout, and their second place in that Flight 10 that we saw, that the high fives going round, and that's exactly why that 1 point just over the Italians, but a lot of pressure breathing down them with 1 point. But you can see the differences between the gaps, and so in that final race we just saw Regatta Club Bodensee taking that win. That's moved them up into fourth place, 32 points. But again, not a lot of breathing space between all these boats. So as the flights continue on, again, you start to see these lead few boats start to find that consistency, keep those boats out. And again, it's very interesting from the French have been a dominant position in third place. Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Aubeuf with 3 first positions and 2 seconds. So again, that consistency, they've really found their groove and started to find that rhythm over the last sort of day and certainly into today, and they're looking to probably continue that. And if they can find that sort of consistency throughout, we're going to have some superb racing.
So as you were saying earlier, Corky, about Società Canottieri Garda Solar, they are the only team that we can see in this top part of the leaderboard who have got an 8th and last place. So very difficult to perform well on the leaderboard if you're carrying any of those last places, because they're the only team that we can see here. I guess some of them, the 7th places maybe were last places in some of the flights, because you don't always have a full flight of 8. For sure, exactly that. And but again, it's just looking at exactly that. They had an 8th and a 4th. That's 12 points you're carrying through, and to someone that scores 2 firsts or a first and a second suddenly is a radical difference. But again, if you would like to know a little bit more about the SAP Sailing Analytics, this is the screen that I'm using here. That you head to sapsailing.com. You find the regatta, and of course we're at the Sailing Champions League semi-final number 1. Once you click it, you will be brought to this screen. At the top we have an overview button, and you can see the next, this was the race number, Flight 10, race number 3, which has just been seen. You can then click onto races, and the next live race will load up just in this live now section, and so soon will be highlighted with the flight number 11. But just looking at the leaderboard and the options that you're able to do, we're just going to have a click on the top 5 boats. So you can see I'm just highlighting in this left column the top 5 boats, and so now indicated by these orange or yellow dots. And we're going to click on competitor analytics. It may look like a child's drawing, and they've had enjoyed the scribbles and the movements around. But what we're looking at is, if we scroll down towards the bottom, you can see flight number 1, 2, and so on along. And as the boats have made their way through, this is their performance. So let's just pick on Yacht Club Bregenz here in the top left. So after the flight number 1 in second place, they saw themselves drop down to 4th. Then down to 5th within flight number 5. But then since flight number 5 have found that rhythm, found that performance, and have moved up into first place after flight number 6, and since then have been able to hold their consistency through at the top. And so this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that these lead teams are starting to find that consistency, are getting off that start line. We've seen many of them coming off that middle part of the line, waiting for that first shift, taking that first shift, approaching that top mark on port, taking that tack in and giving themselves the breathing space at the front, and that consistency there. But let's just, as I say, have a look at the German team of Siegel and Motorboot Club Überlingen. They're sort of after flight number 7,
were up into second, but after that last sort of race there, after Flight 5 has dropped them to fifth. And so it's a nice, easy way. So if you're following a specific team, just click on that team in the leaderboard. So it doesn't need to be the top one. So you just highlight that exact team that you might be following, and that will come up with that. And you just go across the competitor analytics. This is the live leaderboard that I'm talking about. The red button here with the two arrows creating that circle. By clicking that, as the next flight starts, you'll see some red numbers appear. Those are live. So as those positions change on the water, so does the leaderboard. So it keeps you right up to date. But of course, until a flight is complete, then not everybody's raced. And so those points will not be 100% accurate until all boats are completed that flight. But it's a fantastic tool. It simplifies everything that we're doing. But of course, you can make it as complicated as you like. But go across to sapsailing.com and have a look at that. And of course, loving to see your comments coming through on Facebook, and to if you've just joined us but you'd also like to give a shout out to your team, like to post a picture of where you are watching it, we'd love to see it. So head to the Facebook page of Sailing Champions League and /Sailing CL, and it's a great opportunity that, of course, if you're watching this already, you're hearing our wonderful tones of as we're going through on the racing, but also it's a great way to forward it on to your friends and tell them to go and check out the racing that's going on and show your support from the clubs that are all here trying to secure their positions for the final in St. Moritz.
And so 4.5 minutes until the start of the next race, which will be the start of Flight 11 here in Porto Cervo for the first semi-final of the Sailing Champions League 2018. And there is the good ship Matilda, where the sailors hang out when they're not racing on the J70s. And so people checking their phones, a bit of hello from
the wave.
Some of the sailors trying to set off the Mexican wave. Good effort, but not a lot of uptake from some of the other sailors on that. But nice place to spend the day, hanging out under the shade of the canopy on the top deck of the Matilda. So how would you be spending your time? Oh, yeah, Corky's just drawn my attention to the fact that there is an enormous boat in the background that, even though it's probably half a mile away from where this drone shot is happening, it absolutely dwarfs the J70s in the foreground. And that is the kind of yacht that typically you see. Remarkable though it is, it's one of many that you see in Porto Cervo, which is the playground of billionaire yachtsmen. I mean, it's at the Corky. Some of the boats in the marina here are just breathtakingly magnificent and enormous.
Just spectacular, and it's sort of mind-blowing in the sense of how technology is going forward and making these the boats lighter but stronger and stiffer, but also just the technology that goes into making a block. You know, you look in a dinghy and see sort of, or certainly even a J70, they're using ratchet blocks that you would see in most dinghies with regard to their spinnakers. You then truck across over to some of the maxi boats, and when you see them about 10 times the size and the loads that go through them, it's pretty amazing to the research, development, the technology that goes into those boats. And but I'm sure many of these sailors competing for their clubs, again, eyes on the prize, they want to race, but certainly keeping an eye on that boat in the background as well, and wishing that they might be sailing on that at some point in some days in the future. But some great...
It's not just that, it's not so silly to suggest that either, is it? Because if you prove yourself in the small boats like the J70s that we're using in the Sailing Champions League, it's typically the champions that come out of the small boats that go on to do the jobs on the maxis, because the small boats are much less forgiving. The smaller the boat, the higher the input the human has into the performance of that boat, and so it's by no means uncommon to come out of this style of short course racing and find yourself a few years from now at the helm, or calling the tactics, or doing one of the key jobs on board these multi-million-dollar maxis.
Exactly that, and this racing's showing exactly that side of things. With all the teams lined up, one little mistake and that could be the race over very, very quickly. Well, in the maxis and so on, it's exactly the same side of things, is that if you're able to bring that knowledge, that technique, that skill into that sort of racing, then yeah, you'll be a sought-after sailor, and that's what we're seeing across the globe, whether it's Olympic sailors, whether it's just club sailors, through to world-renowned ocean race sailors in the Volvo. But it's great to see all these boats. Interesting lineup now. The boats all still favouring towards this committee boat end, but according to the wind stats, the wind is biased down towards that pin end, only by about 5 meters on that advantage. But again, starting to see a little bit more of a spread across that line. But as you say, not a lot of time, and they're creeping forward. But it's whoever's going to pull that trigger and hit that line at full pace. Looking at these boats down towards this pin end, they're already at full speed trying to get up towards this line.
Well, I like the look of where this green boat, boat number 4, is coming in towards the pin end. I don't think anyone is going to be over early. It's a bit of a struggle for them to make it on time. But a fantastic start by boat number 4. It's Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf from France, who sailed so well in the previous race. And they absolutely nailed the pin end start and already are putting a bit of bad air onto the boat just off their shoulder. It's boat number 7. Which is Wassersportverein Hemelingen. So a good start by Hemelingen, but an even better start by the French. We're on board with Trine Paludan and the other women representing the Royal Danish Yacht Club, Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club. And a good start by them as well. And a very even start amongst a number of the boats. It's only really boat number 1 in the middle of the picture on the right-hand side that's fallen away at all.
And now we're starting to see that squeeze. Bottom of the picture, 4 squeezing high, 7 squeezing high, and suddenly those lanes getting, because they are forcing that gap. These are short courses. They cannot afford to be stuck out towards this left-hand side. Sail over that ley line. Now you'll see the tacks come in. Boat number 4 will go straight into attack as well. So there we go. Those were the lead boats. Great start down towards that pin end, but you are always going to be squeezed to that left-hand side of the course until you can see that boat sailing slightly higher. So within sailing, these guys will be switching through different modes. A high mode, where you're trying to trim those sails and sail as close to that wind as possible. It slows the boat slightly, but shortens that distance on that race course. Or you can ease off slightly, sail a longer distance, but have a greater speed. And so now this is a great shot from the drone here. Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf on this top left-hand side, starting to ease off and try and roll over the top of the other 2 boats, so it gives them the position into that first mark. You can see the speed difference. And Wassersportverein sort of really struggling here because they're being closed on either side, and you'll quickly see them spat out the back of this position. It'll be pretty dramatic. So now they're starting to get affected quite badly from either side.
And what you said, they were the meat in the sandwich for a while, but the sandwich has spat the meat out of the back now, and it's the women on board KDY, Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club, who are now giving bad air to Wassersportverein Hemelingen. And very solid sail here by Trine Paludan, almost in a position to put bad air on the French, but the French will probably be able to hold on just in time to make it to the ley line. But you can see how hard these women are working, hiking hard, trying to make life as difficult as possible for the French up on the right-hand side of our picture. And the French really struggling to hold on here. But the French tactically have the better position, so it will be the French that will be able to just lead around the first mark, followed closely by the women from Denmark. But the French holding the Danes on. I mean, unless we weren't looking, maybe that's not the women mark. Here's the women mark. So the Danes, the women have actually managed to put bad air onto the green boat to the point where the French have dropped way off. And that's a phenomenal sail by Trine Paludan going up that first leg. And unfortunate for the French. And a penalty, meanwhile, for boat number 1, who got a terrible start already, but did very well to get back up into the competition. Borgenländische Yacht Club forced to take an early penalty whilst in the lead. It's the women from Denmark who now lead the French Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf with RS280 as another red flag going up, and it's pointing at boat number 6. So this is a very expensive rounding for a number of boats, and that's RS280, Lithuanian team, skippered by Saulius Badjauskas, who also are going to have to do a penalty. So very expensive mistake for them. And, well, the umpires certainly gave themselves a lot of work to do around that mark, really handing out that red flag on a regular basis. And now Club de Voile Saint-Aubin trying to get down on the inside line of the Danish women. The Danes looking back carefully to make sure that they still have the option to jibe when they choose to do so. French trying to attack the Danes. French really soaking very deep, almost the air falling out of their spinnaker. They're so keen to get tactical position, they're prepared to sacrifice quite a lot of speed to be able to take on the Danes.
Yeah, interesting again with that little bit of speed. Very similar, sort of 5.8 to 6.2 knots, just differing from both of the boats. But again,
simultaneous jibe, slightly better jibe by the French, not the best jibe by the Danes, but they released that spinnaker to its optimum setting point. And the Danes, I would say now, actually are in a stronger tactical position than they were before the jibe. So at the moment, Trina Paludan keeping her cool. She could do with flicking the top batten on that mainsail. The top batten, oh, now it looks okay. They hadn't quite set that mainsail correctly, but they're coming into the bottom mark now. The Danes are going to go for the right-hand mark and aim towards the left-hand side of the course, and the French are going to split the difference. So it's a matter of now, which of these boats, will it be the Danes at the bottom of our picture or the green boat of the French at the top? Who gets the better breeze? It's a bit of a gamble, but the green boat have done the right thing. They're making life tactically very difficult for the Danes, and all that Trina Paludan and her crew can do is make the best of what they've got on the left-hand side, which has tended to be the more favourable side of the course anyway. So still a very strong position for the Royal Danish Yacht Club right now.
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job with that race. And again, it's what we've seen time and time again. Getting off that start line, being able to take that first shift, but holding your lane and being able to hold that lane. We didn't think that any of them were really going to get to that line on time, and it was bang on time just for a couple of the boats, but a lot actually hanging back a lot further. But if you get out in front and have that clear breathing space, you're away from risk of penalties, you're able to sail the race, tuck into the shift that you want, be able to go in and out of high and low mode, makes a big difference from the guys that are bundled all in that back, and sort of you can see the teams all fighting it out for that clear air. And with just a great shot of, again, the women team here hiking out. And so what we mean is you see them stretching their arms out. Any extra bit of leverage they can get over that boat to keep that power in, keep that rig upright, and get that boat driving. But a nice split away from the rest of the fleet, and it'll be interesting. Looking at the breeze, I'd say they've made a big gain out on this left side. They've got a bit more breeze at the moment. And but that breeze is favouring over towards that right-hand side. So there's a nice right shift, but it does look softer out on that right side again. We see people dropping into that sort of pocket on that right-hand side. I'd still say the advantage is with the Danish team closest to us. The nice little bit of a lift coming in. It's neck and neck according to the analytics as it sees this. But that breeze is in that right face. So a little bit of a lift there, but there definitely is more breeze. And so now, just tuning in and having a look at the boat speeds difference between them, we have got a slight speed advantage for the ladies, but with that breeze over towards that right-hand side, the advantage with the French on that lifting tack, but with that additional bit of speed, ladies are carrying about half a knot quicker across this section of the course, and that's what's given them the advantage here. But they are on port. They need to gauge this tack perfectly in here with no section. There's the tack from the French team down below. So still a commanding position from the Royal Danish Yacht Club.
It didn't look that commanding until the last 10 or 15 seconds. And strangely, another tack by the French. So they're already on the ley line. Okay, so they did a double tack just to stay out of the bad air of the Danes. But good sailing, good solid sailing by Trina Paludan and her team. I thought they looked a little bit exposed all by themselves on the left-hand side of that beat, but they managed to get away with it, and they're still in a very good commanding position. Now that we saw the French try to get low and really try to attack from the inside line of the Danish team on the previous downwind leg, and I'm sure we'll see boat number 4, the green sail, try to do the same, try to see if they can find some attacking move on the Danish with the pink boat, boat number 5. But at the moment, the Danes looking in a very strong position to be able to defend their lead.
Well, it was very interesting looking at that wind stats on exactly what happened on that right side. Again, we saw the French team, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin or Elbeuf, dropping down to just under 4 knots and still staying not really much higher than sort of 5 knots, when consistently the Royal Danish Yacht Club sat at about 5 knots, 5.5 knots all the way across that section of that race course. So at least a knot quicker at times, if not a knot and a half. But even when the boat started to close, they still were half a knot quicker. So quite a bit of difference on speed across that race course. And that could be down to breeze on the race course. It could be down to weights within the teams and whether the ladies here are running a slightly lighter team. That could be a possibility in giving a slight advantage. But again, because we can see the speeds up in that top left-hand corner alongside the team names, very similar, all changing out, little puffs on that race course. The breeze back down to more sort of 7.5, 8 knots. And so there are definitely gusts and pockets of breeze to be had on this race course, but still fairly stable. And we're seeing that consistent position of coming in that mid part of the line, taking that first shift, coming in, approaching from that port side, and then being in quite a commanding position to do a similar sort of upwind leg. So, doesn't look the most tactical race course, but certainly shows how important that start is. Getting off that start line, getting round in that first section, in comes the final jibe. Nice and comfortable.
It is going to be a comfortable win for the 5 women on board the boat representing Royal Danish Yacht Club. What a fantastic performance by them. A lot of high fives amongst the crew. Trina Paludan, Josephine Boll, Anne-Sophie Munk-Hansen, Helle Oram, Tina Gramkoff, and the skipper Trina Paludan. Really amazing performance by them. And coming across in a very creditable second place. Looked like they were threatening for the lead. Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf followed in 3rd place by the German team Wassersportverein Emmelingen. And 2 Swiss teams behind them, Regatta Club Bodensee and Regatta Club Oberhofen.
And something really interesting again, and people might be wondering what's happened, but with RS280, they were up at the top fleet, and you were mentioning they were up in and around 3rd position, around that windward mark. We saw that penalty be applied. That sunk them to the back of this race, and again have been out of touching distance. You'll see them coming in. This isn't them crossing the line. They're still out of picture towards that left-hand side. So 1 penalty can send you from those top places where you want to be, securing those lower points, right to the back of the fleet.
Well, the left-hand side is still paying a little bit on these races, and is that them that we see there, boat number 6? So they are bringing up the rear. That is RS280 from Lithuania, paying the price for that penalty earlier on in the race. The course is a little bit skewed to one side, isn't it, Corky? So there's more sailing to be done on port tack than there is on starboard. So normally you would think sail the long tack first to get yourself to the sort of the middle of the course. But that doesn't seem to actually be the case. It seems to be that generally boats are still got a small advantage on the left-hand side.
Well, from what I'm working out from the analytics and looking at that race course, it looks like there's a softer pocket of breeze over towards that far right. And exactly that, you'd want to do that long tack, and so that natural coming out the start line, taking attack and actually getting back across towards the middle of course is proving that it's not working as well as possible. So coming out off that line, what we're seeing, and you can see now it's all adding up with how aggressive boats are off that port end and down towards that pin end mark. Suddenly stuffing boats up, looking to shuffle them off as quickly as possible, staying in that high mode, giving them the chance to be able to take that tack and move back across that race course. That's the biggest thing. It would be really important about staying towards that left-hand side, getting into that breeze, taking that first shift. But if you can't tack because another boat's there, you need to apply that high bid. And so it's all about the speed of the boats, how you're sailing. And I believe Mr. Marcus Bauer might be able to help us out with this.
Sailors win with better tactics or with better boat speed. Ideally you have both, but boat speed is a more controllable part. So what makes a boat go fast? There are three things that are crucial: maximizing drive, minimizing drag, and doing what birds do. Let's go through them one by one. Sailors try to maximize drive by constantly reshaping their sails. They do that by pulling various strings, which is similar to tuning an instrument. Just like a well-tuned instrument sounds right, a well-tuned boat creates the maximum drive forward. Secondly, sailors also try to minimize drag. For example, by polishing the surface of their hulls, keeping them super clean, or by avoiding loose clothing that creates a lot of windage. The third way to go faster is to flap the sails like a bird flaps its wings. A boat is really just like a bird, except that only one wing sticks in the air and the other one dips in the water. But when sailors and windsurfers flap their sails, they use the same aerodynamic effects that make birds take off. Sailors know various techniques with different names like pumping, rocking, or ooching, but they all come down to the same principle: propelling the boat through muscle power. But some of these techniques are illegal, and sailors need to be very careful not to overdo the bird-like flapping, else they can get penalized or even disqualified because judges keep a close eye on what's legal and what is not. But remember, a sailor has to do all of that while plotting the optimal course through shifting winds and currents. That's what makes sailing so difficult.
So, a beautifully simple explanation for a very complicated sport by Mr. Marcus Bauer, who twice represented Germany at the Olympic Games in the 49er. And I particularly like the way that Marcus compares a boat to a bird flapping its wings, except one wing is in the air and the other wing is in the water. And that's the big challenge of sailing, is that we are operating in two mediums. Aeroplanes and birds fly in the air, fish swim in the sea, but sailing boats fly in the air and they swim in the sea at the same time. And that's quite a lot to get your head around. And it's also why when it comes to America's Cup design, one of the sort of the trendy things has to been to bring in aerodynamicists and people from Formula One, but they don't always prove to be as useful as you first think they're going to be, because there is this challenge of the hydrodynamics and the aerodynamics, and that's what a sailing boat is. It's trying to make the best of two very different mediums. Well, Corky, how are you with your mediums?
Well, my mediums are bang on cue. Bang on cue. I think I got it dialed. But this is exactly why sailing is so complicated. It's just the amount of variables is huge. And even though they're jumping in the boats, they're all identical. We've talked about the one design nature of the J70s and that each team rolls in and out and jumps onto that. How the team function, the movement within the boats, and that all comes down to training, practice, hours on the water. But again, the water's different, the waves are different, the breeze is different, temperature changes it. We can see the clouds there, they're all having an effect. And it's a matter of those sailors pulling all those pieces together, pulling that jigsaw puzzle together, and putting together the puzzle that they see out on the water. Some of the teams have got a fairly good, solid, secure platform that they're working off, and there's still a few that but again, you throw in a mistake, you throw in a risky situation that causes a penalty, and that can throw all of that out the window.
And I wonder for some of these teams, say some of the teams further down the leaderboard, if they came in at the beginning of one of these 4-day competitions with all the experience that they just gained from having done 4 days. In other words, how much better have they got over those 4 days? So would the back markers be able to come in and take on some of the front runners? Because you get exposure to so many starts, so many mark roundings, so much sailing experience crammed into 4 days in this Sailing Champions League format, that the rate of gain and of improvement must be immense across those 4 days.
Well, it's exactly that. It's that you're thrown in against all levels of sailors. Some of these people might be sailing a J70 for the first time. Some of them might be their first Sailing Champions League. There might be world champions, national champions that they're racing against, and that's what's so phenomenal about this. But the more racing you're going to do, the more learning, and that's the important bit. You've got to make mistakes, but you got to learn from them, and the quicker you learn from them, the quicker your chances of doing all right on the leaderboard are.
So the last start, we saw a very even start using the whole of the race course. We thought people were a little bit late to the start. This time round, it looks like it's a little bit more bunched towards the committee boat end, and people are closer to the line slightly earlier than they were previous time round. But boat number 4 has got some work to do if they're going to be up on the line in time. But no, it's going to be a good start for boat number 4, just going for the pin end. Getting their approach terribly wrong at the end. And someone was over. It was an individual recall, and so boat number 4 only just sneaked over just a little bit too early.
Yacht Club Brigands, and so pressure's on. So they're at the top of the leaderboard. They had 1 point lead going into this after flight number 10 was completed, and there we see them ducking behind everybody, and that shows one little slip on the start, now pushing them towards the back of the fleet, now with all the work to do. And that's what can just change their whole leaderboard radically.
Big waves here, massive waves suddenly coming from nowhere, which we've not seen very much of. And a penalty there for GVK Platy 25 Association from Lithuania, last in the previous race. And, they've really lost a lot of momentum taking this penalty turn. So expensive mistake for them, and also, as we said just now, for Club de Voile Saint-Aubin. It's Yacht Club Brigands, was it? Our series leaders that really made a mess of it. But look at the waves across this course.
Well, and that's what's interesting. We can see those wave lines, the swell patterns across, but some of the waves are a lot bigger. And so whether that's, again, draw your attention to that top left corner, there's a powerboat racing past. There is still, of course, the beautiful waters of boats being out here and enjoying that. And whether that's just at that time, that was a bit of a wake from a passing boat a while ago, just coming down and joining that bit. But now, with this breeze, we are seeing it coming back up to 9.5 knots, and that is just starting to stir that water up a little bit. So there's certainly a bit more chop and slop for these boats to work through, but that just seemed a bit uncharacteristic, those couple of rocks there. So again, here's the analytics and what we're looking through on that screen as the boat's tracking back. So this is through the Sailing Analytics, sapsailing.com. Click on, of course, the Sailing Champions League Semi-Final 1, and we've got the titles up on where the boats are. But you can see how they're split across this race course. The course, a windward leeward configuration with that gate slightly skewed just to that right-hand side to enable the boats down as a run through to the finish line. But a great start in the breeze. Up in that top left-hand corner, 9.5 knots as we join the drone shot, as we pan across the whole fleet there.
So boat number 7 is Moss Seilforening from Norway. Bottom of our picture, looking in a strong position on this left-hand side. Just ahead of boat number 6, which is Società Condottieri Garda Salò from Italy. So certainly it's the Norwegians controlling the left-hand side of the course, and as we get the windward mark come into picture just on the left of our screen, have the Norwegians done enough to be able to get across the front of the boats coming in on starboard tack? We're looking at the fins. One of the Finnish teams pointing at the probably pointing at the Norwegians, and I think that's the Italians just passing by, so we can't see at the moment how the Norwegians are getting on. The Norwegians, boat number 7, there's a penalty, or there's a protest anyway, against the Norwegians that have just managed to sneak into the lead. Will the Norwegians be able to get away with it? It's a clear flag. It's a green flag. So the umpires have green flagged that situation, and the Norwegians, who tacked in a very precarious, dangerous position, look. Oh no, hang on. There's a red flag for somebody. So let's see who that goes to. I don't think it's to the race leaders, and we will wait and see who falls foul of the red flag from the umpire, because we've seen what a dramatic effect this can have on the outcome of your race. And it looks like it's the Italians from Lake Garda who have to take the penalty.
It was also the Norwegian team, so it didn't look like they squeezed away with it as well. They basically took that penalty as well, and that's where we see boat number 7 just in the bottom left picture. So they led round that top mark, but it looked like they had squeezed that gap and there wasn't the space, and that's exactly how the umpires felt about it. So a couple of penalties being handed out at that top mark.
So instead, it's the Swedes representing Malmö Segelsällskapet, who are now in the lead in the light blue spinnaker closest to our screen right now, being followed closely by the Finns, Åländska Segelskapet. So the Swedes against the Finns. The Finns have just jibed out early. That leaves the pressure off the Swedes in the lead a little bit. So the Swedes now going for a jibe and defending against the Finnish team, who are the ones that are closest to threatening them for the race lead right now. So a really expensive set of penalties there for the Norwegians and the Italians, who were doing so well on the left-hand side of the course. But whenever you're on the left-hand side of your rivals coming into the top mark, you're always at a tactical disadvantage, because you're coming in on port tack and port has to give way to starboard. And the umpires decided that both in the case of the Italians and the Norwegians, they didn't give sufficient room to keep clear, and they paid a high price with those penalties. Jibs roll out. Spinnakers beginning to be folded away, and we're probably going to see a split. And it's the Swedes that opt to go round the right-hand gate mark, going out towards the left-hand side of the course. And it's the Finns that are going to go out to the right-hand side of the course.
The actual top batten on the mainsail. So without actually...
Unfortunate for the Swedes, because they've gone out to the left-hand side, which most of the time has tended to pay, but not on this occasion. So it's Daniel Mattsson, the Finnish skipper, that now finds himself in the lead as they come to the top mark for the final time. Still not much to choose between the front two, and quite a big gap to the back, so to the rest of the fleet, rather. So maybe there's still an opportunity for Malmö to be able to take the fight back to the Finns.
Well, if you're just tuning in, obviously lots going on. This is flight number 11, race 2. So we still have one more flight, one more race within this flight before it's completed. For everyone that's already joining us and watching us online, big shout out to all of you guys. I hope you're having enjoying the coverage. Again, if you'd like to know more, then feel free to pop your comments in on Facebook. We'll pick up on them, and also fire messages through to other people to get them to come and show their support for their clubs. This is these men and women out on the race course in beautiful conditions, but in a lot of tight races, and we can see the distances. There's not a lot of breathing space, as you say, between those front few boats, but also then a little bit of a gap, but then it suddenly tightens back up again.
So just 17, 20 metres between the front four boats, very little to choose between them. Will Åländska Segelsällskapet be able to hold on against the marauding pack behind them, led by Malmö Segelsällskapet, closely followed by APCC Nantes from France? And the ASS on the back of the boat there tells us that that is the Finnish team, Orlandska Segelsalskapet, in the yellow boat on the right of picture. And they've eked out a little bit of a gap to the point where Malmo is probably starting to worry more about protecting second place from the third place French. It looks like Orlandska are a little bit faster down this run than their rivals, and it's looking slightly more comfortable for the Finns than it has done. And not much runway left now, so it does look like Daniel Mattsson and his crew are going to be able to hold on in the bright yellow spinnaker to record a win for Finland in this particular race. And Malmö Segelsalskapet, who were leading this race, but had to yield that lead after a massive split between the front two boats on the final beat. Malmö driving in behind the Finnish team, and APCC Nantes also following. So the finishing order is Finland, followed by Sweden, followed by France, and then coming across the line in the purple spinnaker in fourth place, Società Canottieri Garda Salò, representing the north of Italy, Lake Garda, and still pretty close behind. Looks like it's going to be WSV Huisbeek from the Netherlands, followed by Yacht Club Bregenz, and not an impressive finish for Yacht Club Bregenz by their high standards. As Corky was saying earlier, this could drop them down the leaderboard, having been the leaders of the leaderboard.
Well, very much so. It's put the pressure firmly on them. Of course, this is to take the sort of win here in the semi-final, but we've mentioned that the top 14 boats will track through from this semi-final. So from that side, it's certainly not going to be something they're going to be stressed about, but they have got to rethink that. And that went all the way back to the start line, and just approaching that start too early, didn't have any breathing space. They were at that port end. They had to peel off round that mark and rejoin in. And it shows that just, again, can come down to that start, and that could be all game changer. But here on Matilda is the rest of the teams. Some of them will already be out in the ribs, ready for that swap over, but all resting up, getting a little bit of well-needed shade. Of course, beautiful outside sunshine, but when you're sat in it and all day, then you're certainly going to need a little bit of shade to escape from. Getting some drinks on board, having a bit of a chat about their races, watching some of the races, just trying to switch off before they then get back into those boats there. Chat with clearly the umpires here. Just trying to identify which team.
I think that may be the Italians. It might be Società Canottieri Garda Salò. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, good to see that the crew has managed to keep his cigarettes dry. And that is Società Canottieri Garda Salò. So the Italians just having a little chat with the umpire.
Well, it's an important part within sailing. Everyone sees the umpires as the evil villains, the ones cracking the whip, but actually they're there abiding by the rules, getting the sailors to do that. But an important part about it is that if a penalty's been broken, that a sailor understands why, the team understands what they did wrong, and then explaining it. And that might be a bit of time with the umpire just to say, well, can you explain the situation? What could I have done? How was it? We saw it differently. And by doing that, it allows them to learn from that position and then go forward as stronger sailors. And so it's a hard thing to do, necessarily going and speaking to exactly what you just did wrong and get told exactly why you got penalised. But actually knowing that is something that you can then go and learn from.
Yeah, you absolutely do want to know where you went wrong, especially on those marginal calls where you think you were okay, but the umpire says otherwise. You need to know what it was so that you come into that situation the next time and maybe you make a different decision. And maybe the different decision that the Italians and the Norwegians would make is that even though you've got a sniff of being able to take the lead coming in from the left-hand side of the course, maybe it's not a risk worth taking. It's a real tough one, because if you're going to choose the left-hand side of the course and most of the fleet is coming from the right, you've got to be a little bit better and a little bit further ahead to make the best of the left. That's the unfortunate situation as you get to the top of the mark. Starboard tack takes precedence over port tack, and that's something tactically that you have to bear in mind. And it was a very expensive mistake for the Norwegians in particular, and for the Italians as well. Just a few minutes to the start of the next race, which will be Flight 11, race 33. No one can say that they don't get a fair amount of sailing at a Sailing Champions League event. Huge number of races take place, and a great opportunity to hone your teamwork. One of the challenges, of course, is you don't get a lot of practice time, so you need to make sure that your teamwork is up to scratch before the start of race one. So everyone can make gains and improvements throughout, but to make really big gains and improvements, sometimes you need to experiment, and you can't afford to be experimenting within the realms of these races, where you need to be on it for every single start and every single race that you do. It's Cape Crow Yacht Club on the right-hand side of the screen, the yellow T-shirts. Cape Crow Yacht Club, winner of the Nord Stream race last year. And the winners of their respective national sailing leagues in Northern Europe get a chance to then jump on board a Club Swan 50 and race in the 1,000-mile Nord Stream race. Very, very different type of sailing, even though it's the same sport. You get good at sailing on these short courses that last less than 10 minutes, and if you do well enough at that, you get the chance to compete in a long-distance offshore race far out to sea in a race that lasts the best part of 3 weeks. But that's one of the prizes that you get for performing well in your national sailing leagues. The umpires getting together, just making sure that they're all on the same page.
So it's important that they chat among each other as well, because, again, we see an umpire providing a penalty. It doesn't mean they will have been the ones that have seen the incident. It will have been another umpire that's witnessed the incident, but they're the ones closest to it and are providing that penalty. So that's how the umpires work, is that it might have been seen by one of the other umpires on the race course or in a better position, because of course within sailing the boats are turning around marks, and actually being in the right position, you sometimes can't get in that position due to another boat or being able to keep clear of that. So they rely on each other a lot of the time. That if someone else has witnessed the penalty, they will be the one that will hand the penalty out, and the information will be fed to them. So it's reliant that they communicate well together. And certainly, like listening to them now, they're having a lovely chat, and it's certainly not about the weather. So it's good to hear that they're keeping right up and in tune with that.
I'm pretty sure that the umpire on the left of our screen is talking about exactly the penalty situation that took place at the first mark in the previous race, the one that the Norwegians and the Italians suffered from. I think that's exactly what they're talking through.
Well, and just like to apologise to anyone that has been following live on the YouTube channel through Facebook. There was obviously a little disruption from the internet, and so we are restarted and back up and live. So just need to hit that refresh if there's any problems or on that side of things, and make sure you send that out. But a big welcome if you're just joining us. Please chuck your comments up, or put any pictures up of you watching what's going on the race course, where you're watching, whether you're at one of the actual represented sailing clubs from the Sailing Champions League. It'd be lovely to see and hear where you're watching it from. We're certainly watching from a windowless box within inside the sailing club, and so not in the position where these sailors are enjoying the conditions out on the water, but spectacular conditions out on the water at the moment.
So while we're waiting we're just hearing that we got 3 minutes until the next start. We're on board with Cape Crow Yacht Club, the young Swedes. And breeze seems to be pretty good right now. Boat moving along nicely. The breeze has been looking soft from time to time, and it's not exactly strong winds right now, but it's certainly good enough for some good tight racing. Looks like the big swell, the waves that we saw earlier at the start of the previous race have settled down a little bit. And as Corky said at the time, maybe that was from the wash of a power boat or something that was going past. I've been out here before, and I've seen a US Navy submarine come through the middle of the race course here before, Corky. It's incredible what you can see out here from time to time.
Well, absolutely everything's out on the water. We saw that large maxi yacht in the background. They've obviously headed off for a sail somewhere in these beautiful waters. And, of course, the team's here having a fantastic time. But you do see absolutely everything here. It's a magical place for sailing, and you can see why it's a very prestigious place for many of the world-class regattas that are held here.
When that submarine came through the racecourse, there was a bunch of maxi yachts racing, and normally the maxi yachts don't give way to anyone, but this submarine was not giving away to anybody. It didn't understand port and starboard, it just understood that it was the biggest beast in the jungle, and if it was going to go and motor along at 25 knots through the middle of a racecourse and ruin the race for everybody else, well, that's what it was going to do.
Well, someone's got to do it, haven't they, really? You know, they've got, you know, might need to nip home and make a phone call. He's left his keys on the desk or something. So, you know, if you have to go through a race course, you have to go through a race course, don't you, really?
It's no one wants to get in the way of the US Navy and what they need to get done. So, anyway, it looks like the wind is steady enough. We've got 1 minute 20 to the start. And who will want to do what this time off the race start? It's been a little bit favoured towards the committee boat, if you believe the way the boats have been lining up from time to time. But if anything, we're looking at more of a pin end bias this time. So will the sailors have picked up on that? I suspect they will. How hard will they fight for the pin end? That's another question. And as we were saying earlier, the race course is not quite square. So if you do win the pin end, that's really good. But you've got to make that count very, very quickly. And you've got to force the other boats to peel away and tack off early. Because if they can hold you on, there's a danger of being held over the start line.
Well, this is one of the biggest problems and why we're not seeing many boats attack that pin end. They want to be lured boat of the fleet, but they're not splitting and sitting down towards that pin end simply because if you're over towards that left-hand side, you've got to be in a position to be able to take that tack and get back across. The race course isn't long enough to do that, and certainly you can see a couple of the boats here up onto the line nice and early, jostling for their position, trying to hold themselves tight underneath, but a bit of breathing space with the final few seconds, but back on that line.
Very much so. That's the least competitive start we've seen so far. There's absolutely no danger of that individual recall flag going up there. That was a very, very lazy start by the fleet there, something we don't normally see. And I would say that the pin end boats did get the best start, and that is Circolo della Vella Bari. We saw them win a race at the beginning of the day, and I think they might have got the pin end start when they won that race as well. So the Italians from Bari doing very well in these early stages, and already they look like they're giving gas to some of the other boats behind, like boat number 3, for example.
That's a great shot there. It just shows how that little bit of speed, that acceleration off that line and what it can give you in that jump. And certainly with the angles that we've got at the moment, this breeze favouring this left-hand side, they'll go for it. There we go. Just go for attack on that left-hand side. Take that left shift. And they are in a commanding position controlling the fleet as they come back across the line. They're just low on the actual ley line, so they're not all the way out towards that left-hand side, but they're in a commanding position. So what we're just, we talk about loose covering and hard covering. Here, a nice loose cover where they're just tracking back with the fleet. It just means that if that breeze starts to move around towards the right, they're already headed there to try and gain that shift. If it moves towards the left, it's going to give them a bit of an advantage. allow them to lift up and sail towards that. But exactly how you see the meters from that, they are being set that they are given that advantage at the moment. But a great start. And there, that's from the graphic we're looking at. The wind looks dropping down the race course. You can see how spread out about it is. There are the patches across that race course. But you can see the lead line, which is that slightly greyed out line from the bows. Several of the boats all just nudging that forward. It's sitting with those boats on that right-hand side. But now coming in from that left side as the breeze increases, about up to 9 knots on that left side. It is the Italians who won that pin. And a similar situation we see over the time again. That middle to pin end off that start, sailing out towards that left-hand side, taking that first shift and being in that commanding position into that sort of top section of the mark. It's, you know, it gets quite repetitive. We're mentioning it a fair few times, but this is where the sailors have to really tune into that and just go, well, this is where I need to be. Putting myself round that top mark in that top 3 boats, that's where I need to be. I can't afford to be dropping back and sitting in these back positions. So Yacht Club at Scheveningen are just struggling for dirty air. Here we are with them. Number 3, you can see the angle that they're on, but how slow the boat is. There's a few of them just starting to hike out. But looking at the way they've got that boat set up, looks quite tight on that leech anyway. And so they look like they're stalling and trying to hold that lane. But what's going to happen is as these boats come in hard from this right-hand side, they're going to face all of that traffic as they come around that mark.
Yeah, so it really hasn't worked out as well as we thought it was going to for Circolo della Vella Bari, the early leaders in this race. And they're in a bit of trouble there in the middle of the pack, whilst it's boat number 1. We'll wait and see if there's any penalties.
Just a penalty being thrown up there for the Italians there. Just watching that, there is the red flag on board. It was as they approached on port. They tried to nip across the bow. Not 100% sure. We'll just track back and find out exactly who it was. Believe it might have been across on the German boat. They nipped back, and that is them in the middle of the screen doing the penalty.
Ouch. So we said they got such a great start, which they did, but the left-hand side just didn't pay strongly enough for them, and it was the boats that tacked off earlier that came out ahead, and not least Cape Crow Yacht Club, who are leading this race right now. And we're on board with Yacht Club Aurora from Slovenia, and just getting themselves settled. But that's a disastrous top end of the course for the Italians from Bari, who looked like they were going to lead this race, and now they're flat out at the back with a lot of work to do if they're going to get any kind of decent result out of this race. Whilst in the lead, and a fairly comfortable lead considering it's still the early stages of this race, it's the yellow T-shirts on board the Swedish boat representing Cape Crow Yacht Club, ahead of the Germans, Segel- und Motorboot Club Überlingen.
It's just an unreal sort of situation to get yourself that far up at the fleet. And it's what we see a lot in sailing is that greed, that sort of, oh, there is a gap there. I could just make that little bit of extra, that one place that, and actually putting themselves into that position. All they tried to do, they were on port tack. There was a boat on starboard tack. Port has to give way to the starboard tack, and they just tried to squeeze it. They tried to roll over the front of them. There was a slight alteration from the starboard boat to avoid a collision, because that's what the sailing rules. You've got to avoid a collision at all costs, and that's exactly what happened. They avoided, penalty thrown at them, and now the whole race has been turned upside down.
And it looks like the right is becoming a little bit stronger on these first beats. It does seem like it's a bit more dangerous to get up onto the left-hand side of the course. Meanwhile, from this angle, it's hard to say if we're being fooled a little bit by the TV angle, but it does look to me like Überlingen are beginning to attack Cape Crow Yacht Club, and this is becoming a little bit tense for the Swedes that we're on board with right now. Question is, they're okay because they're going to get round that mark in first place, and what makes it even better for them is that Überlingen are going to follow them around the same mark. So they're increasingly, the teams are beginning to think that the right-hand side of this course is also the right side to defend. And very unusual to see the first 3 boats all going round the same side of the course. So the right-hand side, very much more popular. Überlingen forced to tack out early And Cape Crow Yacht Club continuing on their own out to the right-hand side. And you can see we're on board with the young skipper of that team, which is Jakob Lundqvist. And bottom of our picture now, boat number 7 is Hellerup Sail Club from Denmark, seeing if they can get their way back into this race by going out to the left-hand side, followed by the early race leaders on the right of our picture, boat number 8, bringing up the rear with still a lot of work to do if they're going to overtake anybody in this race, and that's Circolo della Valle Bari from Italy, paying the price, and a high price for that penalty.
Interesting that, let's say, the fleet spreading out towards that right-hand side. And what we're seeing is that actually now the course starting to square up a little bit. We're not seeing it skewed as much as possible. And so now, even though we've seen that breeze go slightly lighter on that right side, as the breeze has been tracking round today, we can see it's still looking quite dark on the water. So we're looking at sort of the patches on the water as well as the analytics, and seeing that the breeze over towards that right-hand side is holding on that side now. And to be honest, it's always given the favouritism side with regard to the wind shift, but it's been that little bit of lighter breeze that's seen those boats suffer for speed on that right side. Well, now, if that breeze stays on that right-hand side and isn't as soft as it's gone on the last sort of few races, it is going to give that little bit of favouritism to that right. And that's where we see Cape Crow Yacht Club approaching from the right. The German team, Ubelingen, coming in from that left-hand side. Breeze in this left side.
This is close. That was quite close on the tack there, but looks like the Slovenians have got away from it. Oh, no, they haven't. I think that's... Yeah, I think the Slovenians have been told by the umpires that they tacked a little bit too close to the Italians there. So that was really an unforced error. That was completely unnecessary by the Slovenians. They were under no pressure to do what they just did, but they've just had to take a spin. And learning some heavy lessons out on this race course today.
And so just to draw your attention, at the top part of this course, it may look like we've got marks dotted all over the place, with 3 of them obviously in this picture. They're 3 different colour marks, and it just allows that when the course is set up, the race committee and the race officer can choose which mark to use depending on the wind shift, whether it drops a little bit, and it enables the racing to run so fluidly. And so we're up around this yellow mark, and it's Cape Crow Yacht Club squeezing in right next to it. Not a lot of breathing space as Ubelingen coming tucked in right behind them. Good hoist on that inside, just trying to get that breeze into that kite and set.
It's a good potential attacking position for the green boats. Ubelingen will try and get down the inside track of the Swedes, and if they can manage that, then there is a chance of being able to seize the lead from the Swedish team. So it's a matter of, can Cape Crow Yacht Club keep their calm? Can they keep their cool? Or will Ubelingen be able to upset them? And just going back a little bit, Yacht Club Monaco, we've not said much about them in this race, but they've sailed a very solid race in 3rd place. But their spinnaker almost collapsing as they try to get low. And there's a big trade-off here between speed and direction. If you wanted to go faster, all you have to do is just push the tiller away from you a little bit, put a bit more pressure, a bit more power into those sails, and the boat would go a lot faster. But tactically, it's quite a weak position. So, in fact, that's what we've just seen Yacht Club Monaco do, partly to defend itself from the 4th and 5th place boats, which has now enabled the gap to open up between 1st and 2nd. Yacht Club Monaco on the left of picture with a white spinnaker, really more in defensive mode, trying to hold on to 3rd place, and not so much about attacking the green spinnaker, which is in 2nd place. So at the moment, Cape Crow Yacht Club managing to hold on to 1st, Ubelingen in 2nd, and those two looking quite secure in those 2 spots at the moment.
Well, interesting, sort of in the previous race, Yacht Club Brigands scored a 6, and then now we see Circolo della Valle Bari down in 6th as well, and they are some of the lead boats. And so some of the lead boats now starting to pick up some bigger points, and so none of this is over, and it's going to all come down to these final races. We've got More races coming today and a full day of racing tomorrow. Well, that was a harsh jibe and a slow jibe out from that situation.
Certainly was a handbrake turn by the green boat there, the Uberlingen Germans, and unnecessary loss of speed there, which has made life a little bit easier for Cape Crow Yacht Club, who were just about to cross in first place. A win for the young Swedes, high fives on board. Good result for the Swedes, and it's going to be in second place, just crossed the line. Uberlingen, and very, very close for third. But Monaco just jibing and just managing to hold on for third place. And then charging in at speed is the light blue. Is it Circolo della Velabari? So what a great comeback from them. So either fourth or fifth from them. It was a photo finish, very difficult to tell, but really good recovery by the Italians. And Corky was just saying how important each of these points are, and how one of the series leaders was having such a shocker. Well, at least they have converted that shocker into something more of a respectable result just at the finish line, with some really sharp sailing coming in from the opposite corner of the final run to the rest of their rivals. So a bit of a debrief on board the winning boat. The young Swedes are very happy with how they sailed just then. A very solid performance by Cape Crow Yacht Club. And every race that you do, win or lose, is all a learning experience. So you can... hands are incredibly useful, both for umpires and for sailors, in terms of gesticulating and saying, this is what we should have done in this situation, this is what we could do differently next time.
Well, interesting, with that race win, they are in 14th position. And there's only a point separating them, and 2 points separating them from up to the top 10. But we talk about the reason why that's such an important position is because that's the qualifying cutoff for the final. So we're not looking at just who's going to take this win here in the semi-finals. This is one of the semi-finals here in Porto, with the next one in St. Petersburg in Russia. But it is that cutoff point. Can you get yourself qualified? And actually taking that race win is going to be a very, very important one to keep them in that qualification situation.
Well, let's see that all-important leaderboard. And Corky, talk us through the implications of what we're seeing here now.
Well, so let's just have a quick look at what's been coming out of the Flight 11. So you can see how tight the points still are. Equal points from second and third between those two boats, 32 points. And so these points are chopping and changing, but you can see in that flight number 11, they both picked up higher scoring points. So we saw Circolo della Velabari down in fifth place, but we saw them in sixth, but that 1 point just gave them that jump sort of on Yacht Club Bregenz into that final bit. We saw them squeak in right at that final finish, and that's where it's at, the points. But it's about that consistency. So we're starting to see a bit of a gap open up between the top 5 boats today. So we see from Regatta Club at Bodensee, we can see them with 36 points, and then a little bit of a jump to their fellow countrymen, Regatta Club at Ubenhof, with 41. So there is a bit of a gap forming in those top 5 boats, but still plenty more racing and errors being thrown in, from whether we see them as schoolboy errors and people trying to gauge those gaps, jump in and get a little bit greedy. That's going to be the punishment if they slip up and make those mistakes.
And also good to see that that first place finish for the all-women team, the only all-women crew here from Royal Danish Yacht Club, has lifted them inside the top 10 up into 8th position overall. And do you think that there is any advantage to being male or female sailing a J70?
No, I think out of many of the boats, we see some of the boats becoming so physical and actually having what we class as horsepower sort of on the boats. Then that sort of suddenly creates a bit of an unfair advantage, and that's what's so wonderful about the J70s. It's just a great class of boat, and it is just coming down to some people sit there going, oh well, I only want 4 4 people on board, and well, actually having a 5th person might be fantastic. It's another pair of hands and so on. It's another opinion. It's another bit of experience you're gaining on board the boat. And so depending on how you're setting up, then no, this couldn't have a more neutral playing field.
Well, that's pretty useful, and that's certainly how we're seeing it play out with the Danish women being able to win the race quite comfortably in the way that they did. It's about having a crew that operates well together. You've got your choreography down. Everyone knows their job for every given maneuver and every situation on the race course. At least that's how it's meant to be, and it's whoever does that to the best of their abilities for most of the time that is going to come out ahead. So we're waiting for a race to kick off again. I don't know if we have time for one of our crash course sailing. I'm just waiting to find out if that is the situation. So we've been talking an awful lot about the start today. It is an absolutely crucial part of any sailboat race, but particularly when the races are as short as they are, just 10-minute races. So our man, the double Olympic sailor for Germany in the 49er, Marcus Bauer, has this nice little explanation of what the start is and why it's so important.
The most crucial, difficult, but also the most interesting moment in any sailing race is the start. There are a number of challenges a sailor has to deal with at the start, and it takes years of practice to master them all. So what are they? First and most obvious, you need to cross the line with maximum speed just when the countdown hits 0. The race officer triggers the countdown and communicates the start time to the sailors through sound and flag signals. You then have to judge the time and the distance to the line, which is kind of invisible, only defined by 2 flags on either side. The second big challenge is about deciding where you're going to start. In most sports, the starting position is predefined. In sailing, it's up to you to decide where you're going to kick off the race. You need to follow a set of racing rules to avoid collisions, but apart from that, you're free to pick any position that you think will give you an advantage. And you can get an advantage in a number of ways. Often one side of the line is favored, even though the race officer tries to set the line at a right angle to the wind, which would make the line neutral in theory. But the wind has the habit of shifting in direction and strength, often favoring one side, sometimes quite dramatically. Apart from working out which is the best side of the line, you also need to foresee which is the better side of the course. And often that judgment does not match the favored end of the line. As if that wasn't complicated enough already, physics also come into play. Depending on where you have lined up in the pack, you will get better or worse winds than others, which leads to aggressive battles before the start. If that leaves you dazed and confused, hit the rewind button. That's kind of what sailors do when they practice a start 10,000 times before they win a World Cup.
Looking back at that last start, and Circolo della Vellabari, such a nice start off the pin end of the line, and I would have almost staked my house on them winning that race halfway up that first leg, and then it just all fell apart for them at the top of the course, and suddenly they're not quite in the lead. In fact, they've got to duck a couple of boats. They've got to thread the needle through the starboard tack boats. They don't succeed in doing that sufficiently to the satisfaction of the umpires. They end up taking a penalty and they're back in last place. So it can all fall apart very quickly. But there's no doubt that most of the time a good start is going to get you out of the blocks and get you into a good position to win the race, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly it. It's a fundamental part of setting up your race to the decided a race course you wanted to go on. Marcus hit the nail on the head in exactly that. It's not just about being at the right end of the start line. It's about where you want to be going on that race course. But again, there are the rules that you've got to abide, and it's taking a risk and how much risk and reward. And it becomes a way of a sailor looking at it as if it's sort of gambling in that sense, is that I can overtake one place coming into this mark. How much do I risk to overtake that place? And some of the risks, exactly as we saw in that last race. Great to see the sailors having a bit of a wave on board there on Matilda, waiting for their next races. But again, it's people taking that risk. how much risk and how much reward? Are you willing to go all in, put all your stakes on that one cross to gain that one extra boat and find out that actually if it goes wrong, the penalty could be huge? And that's what we're seeing. You've got to get around this race course. You've got to sail sensibly. You just can't afford to pick up these big penalties.
And those millimetres and centimetres don't count for, they're never more important than at the start. I was a little bit surprised in the last start that people were hanging back. There was no opportunity, there was an opportunity for people to be higher up on the line than they actually were. And I thought they were a little bit slow to get going. And yet that should have played even more into the hands of the Italians. But somehow the left-hand side caved in, and we're seeing the right-hand side of this race course increasingly become more favourable. We're only talking about a little bit here and there. We're not talking about big margins. It's quite an even race course, isn't it? Which is great for sailors, and it's great for us because the worst thing that we would want to see and the sailors would want to experience is a one-way track. We're certainly not seeing that. There's opportunities up both sides of the race course.
No, and exactly that. And being one design as well, the speed differences aren't radically different between the boats. And so that's what's keeping them so tightly packed. And again, that comes down to why you've got to keep your nose clean, really, around this race course. So getting off that start line is very important. That was the 3 minute to the start of this race. So all the crews just taking in a bit of a look across that race course, seeing what's going on. Bit of weight distribution going on again from Cape Crow Yacht Club here.
Emptying the ballast tanks.
Don't need to be carrying any extra weight around that race course than you need to. Certainly in this breeze that we've got going on.
And the yellow flag is what? Is that?
It's indicating the yellow mark at the top part of the race course. So we saw in that previous race, and to highlight, there are 3 windward marks at the top part of the course. And all that does is identify which mark is being used as the windward mark. So you'll see them as they approach that top end of the race course. There'll be a white mark, and I also believe a red mark as well. And they will sail past those to that yellow mark. So a little bit of confusion at that top end of the race course, very easy. But again, if you haven't paid attention to what flag's gone up and just get on and sail because you're just getting into that routine. We all do it when we get on an aeroplane. Don't listen to the safety briefing because we've been on an aeroplane before. You can get into quite a automated way of just of a process and forgetting about that. And suddenly, if you can't remember exactly which course it is, that can be a spanner in the works for people straight there.
And you would think that with 4 or 5 people on board, there would be enough people to remember which flag it was. But in a way, sometimes the more people you have on board, the easier it is for everyone to think it was somebody else's responsibility to remember those small little details. I really like this idea of having a choice of 3 windward marks. And it really enables the race committee to keep the action flowing from one heat to the next. And I wonder why we don't have it more in sailing. It seems like such an obvious idea now that I've seen it.
I think it's a great way, and certainly when you've got such a time constraint on these races where the boats have to just switch in and out, the teams jumping on, and that's something that we can't afford to suddenly have 20 minutes go past as the race committee is shuffling the course. Fortunately, we're in a venue where the breeze is proving to be pretty stable. It's not moving around a huge amount. If it is, it's a few degrees left or right. It's the actual strength is a few knots, half a knot here and there. And because of that, those 3 marks is just a great bit. But as you say, it would just be such an easy and simple way for race courses to be able to do that so that you didn't lose that time and you could just get boats racing. But again, straight off the start here into the starting sequence, we still have a little bit of bias towards that port end, but you're not wanting to commit yourself down to that port end. You need to stay just underneath the pack if you are on that pin end boat to be able to stuff boats up, provide that opportunity to tack as they approach that line. They're still a little bit further back again for some of the boats. There's hanging back in the middle part of it. You can see down towards this pin end. They've got complete control of this.
It's Yacht Club Cervo from Netherlands that seem to be controlling the pin. And we saw that unforced error by the pin boat. It's very close for the Dutch. Are they going to get away with it? Will they be an individual recall? No, it's a clear start. So a very, very good start by the Dutch, who we see front of picture, having to muscle their way through a bit of slop and chop. But especially that plays into the hands even more of the Dutch. The more the boats are bouncing up and down, chopping wood as they call it in the trade, the better it plays into the hands of the Dutch here. And you can see boat number 2 on the right of picture falling into the dirty air. That's Yacht Club Monaco, already forced to tack out. So very difficult early stages of the race for them, whereas for Yacht Club Scheveningen from Netherlands, a very solid start. Now the question for them, for the Dutch, is do they have enough distance to be able to tack safely across the front of the green boat, number 4? And they're going to go for it anyway, and now it's the moment of truth. What they would love is for that green boat to just tack and give them an easy life. But are they going to do that? Are they going to get across boat number 4? Yes. In the end, was there a flag go up there from the other boat?
There was a call and a shout from the boat, whether that was a clear identification.
It's a red.
It is.
Oh, I think that was a little bit harsh. I think that was a little bit harsh on Scheveningen. But no, you disagree, Corky?
Well, it's a port and star, but again, if
how much did the green boat have to give way? How much did boat number 4 actually have to give up there? I don't think they had to. They did change course, but did they actually have to change course? Did they do what's known in the trade as a Hollywood?
Well, that's the grey area within the rule side of things. And again, but why would you risk it? Why would you put yourself in that position?
Because I thought they were going to make it. That's why, Corky.
Cool, you're a gambler, aren't you?
Anyway, the gamble went against them, and Regatta Club Bodensee from Switzerland managed to stick one on the Dutch, and the Dutch have given away a lovely little early lead, and now they find themselves fighting for air, just like the rest of the fleet. So let's see how Bodensee does coming out of the left-hand side now that they've stuck it to the Dutch.
Well, interesting as well. Yacht Club Monaco, we saw were the ones being squeezed off that line by the Dutch team there. Well, actually, they tacked out and have done that same situation, coming in on that first shift on that left-hand side in the mid part of the course and are holding into a really nice, solid position. WSV Heesbeck, they're out towards the right-hand side, looking to go a little bit further. You'll start to see the crews now ducking underneath. But there, Yacht Club Monaco, the red sails up in front of that group. They are going to be leading the charge in from that right-hand side. But looking fairly nice for Regatta Club Bodensee as well as they approach from this left-hand side. But again, are they going to risk? There's not a huge amount of space between that. Are they going to take that duck, nip in behind them? Or are they going to try and be greedy and look for that space? Look, there's the gap. They've got to go full speed through that gap, clear the bow of the other boat and take that tack straight up and not cause any incident here.
Will it be enough? Will it be enough? Will boat 4 get away with that? I agree with you, Corky. I think boat number 4 has done enough there, Bodensee, to hang on to second place. But it's Yacht Club Monaco, the red sail, that goes round in the lead. And we're on board with another Dutch team, WSV Heesbeek, going round in third place. But what about that other Dutch crew that we were so excited about earlier on in the race? The Dutch on the Scheveningen boat. And
Yacht Club Scheveningen, they are in boat number 8. They're the turquoise, so we see them in 5th place. So
it didn't work out that bad. I thought it was going to be a lot worse for them.
They managed to hold on that little bit, but as I say, for a team that got squeezed at that first section, Yacht Club Monaco are the ones that have come away nicely from it.
Regatta Club Bodensee trying to get down on the inside of them, but Yacht Club Monaco at the moment looking like they've got the deeper line, and Regatta Club Bodensee in danger of being swallowed up by Cape Crow Yacht Club. So Bodensee having to protect against the Swedes in third place. The Swedes really trying to soak down on top of the green spinnaker of Bodensee from Switzerland. Yacht Club Monaco, the sail's almost turning inside out. They're going so deep, and now they roll into a jibe. and a small sigh of relief for Monaco because they're managing to hold on to that lead and managing to control the direction that they do this very, very difficult run in.
Interesting there, as I say, just off the centre line of this course, they've got a nice little bit of breeze and trying to soak back down. So they've made a nice bit of a gain here. The question will be how they split at the gates, and there it is. Now it comes in. So they're clearly jibing earlier because they're wanting to take that right hand or the furthest gate mark from us and take out towards that right hand side. So a little bit of a split from Regatta Club Bodensee. Now going in, and again that jibe drop. You can see how aggressive you have to be with a tiller and a sliding wide around that mark. So again, it doesn't look like they've lost any distance or lost anything from other boats, but that gap will enable Cape Crow Yacht Club to sail that slightly tighter line. There we see it, and instantly Regatta Club Bodensee trying to close that gap, but that was all down to a bit of a poor rounding. So pressure starting to be. Remember, these sailors have been on the water for quite a long time now. They have that bit of a rest period within getting on that boat, Matilda, and having that time in the shade. But otherwise, you're in the sun. You've got to keep yourself hydrated, keep the food levels up, keep the concentration. And it's very difficult and easy to just overanalyze everything. If you slip up in a race, where did it go wrong? When this, if something starts to niggle within the team, it's got to be nipped in the bud pretty quickly and settle yourself back down.
Well, you want to analyze up to a certain point, but so much of it is down to personality, and we have very analytical types of sailor, and then we have what we call seat of the pants sailors that never really stop and think about what they do. They've just got a natural instinct, and they just sail on their gut rather than on their heads. And so it's a matter of what kind of sailor you are. I mean, I think I sail from the gut.
Do you? I'm from the seat of my pants. Always tells me where the wind's coming from. Well, a lovely
where the wind's coming from.
Lovely comments on Facebook to everyone that's joining us there, and please leave your message. Chris Moore would like to mention you. Of course, some fabulous shots of our ace commentators will be coming up soon. We'll put on our best smiles when you got backdrops and views like that. There we are. Thank you very much, Chris. But I think certainly looking at these pictures and the spectacular waters here in Costa Esmeralda, it's just spectacular racing for these sailors, and the pressure firmly on. But up in the front and dealing with that pressure, Yacht Club Monaco looking nice and comfortable in control here with a 26-metre lead.
And there was a Dutch match race move there. Boat number 3, WSB Heusbeek, sailing slam dunking on top of their fellow Dutch team from Scheveningen.
You know, that's how it's about. You know, you're here to represent your club. They may be from the same nation, but that's the club. These are the information we're seeing from the SAP analytics, and their Yacht Club at Monaco, 5.4 knots out in front, the red line as they approach that top mark. But you can see the breeze in that top left-hand corner. We're seeing closer to 10 knots, and that's what's showing these boats really starting to light up and the racing really unfolding. But these gaps, stunning. There's the lead. You can see the distance creeped out in front now, 31, 32 metres and extending as the rest of the boats all bunch together, and that Disturb there just starting to put pressure on those boats. But again, doesn't matter how far you lead. You could have a 100-metre lead. You still equal the same points. It's all down to the position and where you finish.
So boat number 1 in 3rd place, having to shoot for the mark a little bit below the ley line, but Cape Crow Yacht Club get round safely. It's going to be a real battle for 3rd place between the Swedes and the 2 Dutch crews right behind the Swedes. Meanwhile, at the front, in the far distance, it's Yacht Club de Monaco, who have pulled out and extended their lead on Regatta Club Bodensee. So Regatta Club Bodensee, if you remember, went out to the left-hand side of the course, and they lost out. So we keep on seeing the right-hand side more and more as the afternoon stretches on the right-hand side seems to be the firmer bet.
It's got that feeling of sort of a sea breeze feel to it. We did have very light breeze here this morning, a little bit of sort of breeze with inside by the yacht club. But as soon as you went out to the race course, there was a slight postponement on that for the sailors held on shore. But it's got that feeling. Look at the cumulus clouds building up over the land from that sea breeze. Now it's starting to track right slightly. And that's generally what we see sort of with that sea breeze. And so whether that's starting to straighten out this race course, the breeze coming up a little bit as the temperature's cooling slightly.
And why does it track right like that?
Well, I say it just follows the sun round over towards that right-hand side. And so as the sun moves round towards the right to obviously track round, it is just moving round on that race course as well.
And it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, obviously we know that the sun moves, but it seems to move very slowly. And this is a very short course, only lasting a few minutes. But even in just the space of a few minutes, the sun can have that effect in terms of moving the wind direction around.
So across the line at Yacht Club Monaco, 40-metre lead plus, nice and secure. Likewise with Regatta Club at Bodensee there, a nice bit of breathing space. But look how tightly packed.
Cape Crow Yacht Club, can they hold on? They were leading, but it looks to me like they're going to be overtaken by WSV Giesbeek. And it is the Dutch WSV that just get past Cape Crow. Cape Crow stuck in a Dutch sandwich. So Giesbeek get third, Cape Crow get fourth, and Scheveningen get fifth place. Some way ahead of the next boat, GVK Plateau 25 Association from Lithuania, and bringing up the rear, JK Aurora from Slovenia. So if we think back to the start again, and I thought Scheveningen were a little bit hard done by on that first port starboard incident. But Corky, you came down the side of the umpire. You thought the red flag was fair enough.
I think you're getting a bit soft in your old age. It was a port and starboard, and that's the problem. There is a grey area of how much they need to avoid from the image. You know, we might be able to bring up a replay of that and then have a quick look at that. But there was an alteration. How much? It doesn't really matter. There was that alteration, and the umpire saw it, and it had to be a plain Rule 10, port and starboard. And unfortunately, that's the risk you take. Again, would they have been better off just ducking and accepting that little bit of a loss, but making that gain at the top part of the course? Sailing's all about, do you take a short-term gain but then end up with a longer-term loss? Well, actually, you know, do you take a short-term loss and make a longer-term gain? You've got to think about your overall strategy and your plan on where you're trying to get. But again, with the number of races sailed, so that is flight 12, and so that is race 34 completed. So even though we're only on flight 12, that's 34 races the boats will have sailed. And so 12 races for each of the team. It's a huge number. And it gets to that point where you just end up going for anything. You need to claw those points back. You need to take those options. And when you take those risks, it starts to become a fairly easy thing to do. So
surely that in a series as long as this, that goes for as long as it does, those marginal risks are not worth taking.
No, exactly, because the problem we've also got is that there are no discards. You know, in most other sailing over a regatta, there will be 1-2 discards applying. What we mean by discards is being able to just get rid of your worst result, whether that's because you've started prematurely, whether you've just had a disastrous race and finished up last. Well, normally you can get rid of a couple of them. Across this whole board, there is no discards. And so you slip up and pick up maybe a 6, a 7, or an 8, and that could all be down from a risk and getting a penalty. That can change your whole result. And so it's all about consistency, like it is in any of the racing. But when you've got no discard, no room for error, that was a big risk. Certainly coming off the start line in that first tack, you were leading, and in a long way forward, it's a pretty risky sense to go for that. So great to see other comments on Facebook. Elizabeth Eriksson saying hi from Sweden and supporting the Swedish team there. I'm sure the Cape Crow Yacht Club. So, and also the other Swedish team, Malmo, Segelsällskapet. And this is something else that we really get from the SAP Analytics, and is why it's such a fantastic tool. We've just picked out a few of the top running teams on this. This was Flight 12, Race 1. You can see the distances. So sailing comes down to, it's not a matter of just being the quickest boat. It's a matter of shortening the distance, and that was exactly what Marcus Bauer nailed down in his sailing analytics talk and how to race around on the race course. But Yacht Club Monaco, a great distance, minimizing that, minimizing maneuvers. Why it's good: every time you do a tack, a jibe, or go into a maneuver, that slows the boat and picking that speed up. So what you're looking for is minimal distance, minimal maneuvers, and a nice, good, comfortable speed. And Yacht Club Monaco did exactly that. So slightly higher maneuvers, similar sort of or distances, slightly less on Regatta Club at Bodensee, slightly lower on the speed, and that could have been the difference between those two boats. But then we start to see sort of the boats further back. More maneuvers. That's because they're trying to escape dirty air. They're trying to get out of other boats, avoiding other boats. So if you're out in the front, you will see less maneuvers being put in, and also greater distances. So that's what you're looking for, and a great graphic put together by the SAP Analytics.
And 4 maneuvers by Yacht Club de Monaco winning that race is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm not very good at my geometry, but I don't think on a 2-lap race course you could actually get away with doing any less than 4 maneuvers. That's about as clean a race as you can do, isn't it?
Well, that's it. It's sort of, you think about the nature of that. It's you know, a tack going up the first beat, a tack in at the windward mark, and then one jibe, and then likewise up again. So you are minimising.
One manoeuvre per leg. You can't do better than that, can you?
No, you're minimising it to the maximum, and that's...
I like that, minimising it to the maximum.
Just throwing out each end of the spectrum to try and confuse people. Confuse myself. A lot of support online for the Swedish team. Malmo, Segelsällskapet. Sorry about the pronunciation. Andy and I have been working on this very hard, but being classic British commentators, we seem to be doing our best to fumble our way through it. But a lot of support on Facebook for the Swedish teams, which is superb to see. So if you're watching from anywhere else, throw up your comments. Again, chuck up some pictures of where you're watching it if you're with friends or family. It's great to show the support. But we are going to go into race number 2 with Flight 12.
We're on board with Regatta Club Oberhofen from Switzerland, skippered by Alan Stettler. And we're just 1 minute into the start. And they will be doing all those usual multiple calculations. Which end of the start is favoured? Which side of the course do we think has the best wind? At what phase is the wind in? Is it in a left or a right-hand phase? All these things think about. How far from the line are we? How's our time on distance? Constantly looking at their watches, trying to work out where that invisible line is between that red buoy in the front of the picture and the mast of the committee boat with the orange flag behind. So we're pretty much sighting down the line right now with 30 seconds to go. And the pin end that I keep on talking about, you know how I love the pin end of the line at the moment. It looks like it's Circolo della Vella Bari who are in the pin end position, and we've seen them muck this up before where we think they've got the perfect pin end start and they're just over the line early, but it looks very pin end biased to me this time round.
It is strong to that pin end. They're going to struggle to make it, and that's exactly where we see him on this right side, taking his tack out. They'll have no rights here and should be ducking down behind.
This is a very messy start and a real error there by the Italians. Boat number 3 not exactly coming off the start with any kind of boat speed. That's Moss Seilforening from Norway. And we're on board with the Swiss from Oberhofen, just going through attack. And there's a lot of gains to be made in this early part of the race. Oh, someone complaining that they didn't quite cross cleanly there. So will we see a red penalty handed out to Oberhofen? everybody now onto Port Tack because there was a big wind shift just before the start. That's my feeling anyway. Corky may well be able to confirm or deny that once he's looked at the analytics. But that pin end bias suddenly became almost impossible to cross the start line. So it suggests there was a massive shift to the left-hand side. And this boat, number 4, I would think would need to tack fairly soon because I would imagine that the ley line on this side of the course is coming up very quickly indeed. And so that's Cervo della Bari, who made a bit of a mess of the start and have given themselves some work to do on this side of the racecourse.
Well, you put the pressure on. You said they had mucked it up before and then suddenly put the pressure on and they did exactly the same.
You're
See,
right,
commentator's curse. But again, this is what we're seeing the sailors. They've actually been fairly well looked after over the last sort of few races, that it's been a fairly static start line, little bit of starboard bias when we joined earlier in the day, starting to track towards that port end bias, and then with this breeze moving quite a lot, and we saw just off that start line as the start went, we ended up with a good 8-9 degrees wind shift round to that side, and it was enough to push these boats out, and that's exactly where we're seeing these lead boats come from. Breeze is up 9.5 knots. So the breeze, as the day's gone on, has increased a little bit as well. A welcome relief for many of the sailors that would be looking for a little bit of more breathing space. Norwegian team.
Port starboard coming up here. Corky. Are the Italians...
All clear. All clear.
It's already all clear in your mind, is it?
Oh, see.
You're so confident. Boat number 7 almost had a piece of the Italians, but not quite. It's the French on board APCC Nantes, skipper by Simon Berthaud. And once you're up on this side, you're in tactically quite a disadvantageous position. I would have thought that the French would have been better off tacking the other side of the Italians. They've really given themselves no tactical options where they put themselves right now.
No, so this graphic's a great way of saying exactly what Andy's just picking up, is that with a race course, if you stay in the middle of the race course, you've got more options. If the breeze moves to the right-hand side, you can get to it. If the breeze moves to the left, you can get to it. The further, if you stay out to one side of the race course, then you're already stuck. But here's the leaders, so let's just join them as they come in at this top mark here.
It's the Norwegians, Moss Selforening, representing Norway, and a nice little early lead for them ahead of... Oh, we just see a green flag go up, so no incident there, whatever that incident was for. It's Regatta Club Oberhofen round in second place, followed by boat number 1, which is Wassersportverein Hemelingen from Germany. Red penalty flag goes up. Who's going to be paying the price this time round? We just see that boat going round. It's boat number 7 taking the turn. It's APCC Nantes. So coming back to tactically the reason why it was a bad idea for them to carry on past the other side of the Italians, they come in on, it puts them in a position where they have to come in on port tack on the ley line, and they put themselves in grave danger of copping a penalty from any of the starboard tack boats.
Well, it's exactly that. You position yourself out to one side of the race course or not, you're already minimising your options due to the breeze. The breeze is going to move around. But by putting yourself out onto that port ley line, we've seen time and time again penalties being applied to those port boats as they come in, try and squeeze the gap, try and tack underneath a starboard boat or in front of it, not providing enough room, penalty, bang. Now you look at them, they're looking down. It looks probably a beautiful shot as we look down at all of these rainbow spinnakers down to that back boat, but certainly not a comfortable position for them.
So Carl Einar Jensen, he is the helm of the Norwegian boat. Done a lot of good work in the Optimist in his youth, and also sailed the 470. At the moment, he is the leader with his crew on the right of picture, just getting their jib rolled out. Mainsail's still quite far out, but getting the spinnaker in, and the Norwegians just preparing to go round. There's been a course change, which is what you can hear is that hooter The hooter is telling, there's a bit of an inside rounding going on here. That looks a bit tight, and there's a coming together of boats. There has to be a penalty that comes out of that. Someone's going to have to pay the price. And who is the umpire has green flagged it. Surely we can't be talking about the same incident that we've just seen, because I'm sure I saw contact.
Well, there was definitely contact between those lead two boats when it looked like there was sort of going into pushing for mark room coming into that gate, and it all looked as if they we're here with Regatta Club Oberhofen feeling like they had actually been pushed out round towards the sign, felt that penalty being applied to them. But we saw that contact. You know, there was enough of a contact that it pushed the helm back down from standing up onto that windward deck. But whether that overlap was established or broken coming into that gate mark will be the deciding factor. But according to the umpire, they felt that that actual decision was fine, and the coming together was just the boats trying to get round that course, and there wasn't enough space. But it still seems ludicrous that if there was contact, there should still be a penalty of some sorts being applied. But
yeah, I'm quite surprised by that. I think someone got off lightly there, and the boat that really profited out of all that mess was Wassersport Verein Hemmerlingen, who are now vying for the lead. I'd say they're very much in a position to be able to battle, and this is who we're on board with Kraftwerk on the back of their buoyancy aids. And you can see the helm, Jan Seekamp, putting a lot of concentration in, looking over his shoulder, looking forwards again, just getting a gauge of what the wind is doing. Slightly sort of uncomfortable helming style. Looks a bit pained, and you just want him to sit upright and enjoy it a little bit more.
we notice a lot of the helms doing that. It's like a real dinghy way of sailing, rocking back a little bit, and it seems a strange way of doing it. Unless they're constantly trying to just have a glance under the boom, or they're trying to track down at something, why you just wouldn't sit up that little bit further. Here you can see on the graphics a decision there, and there's the duck coming in.
That's why he was looking. That's why he was looking so strange the way he was sitting. He was looking underneath the boom to see what the situation was with the other boat coming across on starboard. That's Circolo della Velabari. So the Italians coming back into contention in this race. So we're not seeing a clear race leader. This is unusual compared with the other races we've seen.
No, well, there's a lot of people pushing constantly through it, and I think it's just getting towards that latter part of the day, bit of fatigue, mental fatigue, tiredness kicking in, and mistakes starting to happen. This is where the teams, there'll be some late calls, they'll be trying to push, they know the points are adding up, and here we go, coming in on this mark. This is going to be a bold move again.
What is boat number 5 coming in on port tack going to do? I mean, there's nowhere for them to go. This could be really expensive. So they're going to get across one boat. And luckily what are they going to do? Are they really going to fit in that space? Surely not. Surely not. Purple boat must be in all kinds of trouble. I can't see any way out of this other than being given a penalty. I'll be extremely surprised if the boat that's second around gets away with that. But they've already got their Jenica up, which suggests that they think they're okay. So Regatta Club Oberhofen, we're on board with them now. Ellen Stettler looking cool. Has he got away with it? Looks like they have. Okay. Well, I think the umpires are a little bit more lenient in this race than we've seen them in previous races.
Well, we definitely be interesting to have a chat with them when they come ashore on their views of tacking in at that windward mark and what the position is on that. It's all looked pretty tight in that position, but a great sort of extended lead out of the front from Circolo della Velabari. They're doing nice and comfortable out in front.
And what a great race for them, considering the start that they had. I gave them the commentator's curse at the start. They missed the start line. They had to jibe or tack back round, I can't remember which, and cross underneath a bunch of boats. And here they are with quite a healthy lead coming down towards the finish.
But again, what it's showing is that this race course is starting to stretch out. There's room for opportunity. But what we've also seen throughout this race course again is the endless amount of errors or penalties being applied and people trying to push the envelope through all the ways, whether it's at the lured marks, they're starting to get a bit more scruffy, they slide wider, and that actually, if you sail a fairly comfortable race with the course opening up a little bit more and you're able to take the opportunity of these shifts, you can draw yourself back in. And again, they've done nothing sort of ingenious. They've just sailed comfortably on the shifts. They took that far gate hand mark. They sailed out towards that right-hand side, gave themselves the advantage. They got a nice little shift that we saw the German team, Wassersportverein, to have to take that little bit of a duck below them. But otherwise, it's been comfortable sailing across down straight through the finish line.
A great comeback by the Italians to win that race. What an incredible comeback by Circolo della Vella Bari, but very, very close here. It looks like Regatta Club Oberhofen are just going to sneak second ahead of Wassersportverein Hemmerlingen, and then going across in fourth place is Burgenländischer Yacht Club, followed by Mosselverening. So Mosselverening, the Norwegian boat that was leading that race early on, ends up in fifth place. So what a turnaround of fortunes for them, and an unfortunate one for any Norwegian fans. And a photo finish there between boats 7 and 8. That's the boat from Nantes, France, and RS 280 representing Lithuania. So the Norwegians, an unfortunate finish for them. For Circolo della Vella Bari, an incredible race win for them. It'd be interesting to see the lead changes in that race if we just go back through it. So the Italians were lying in fourth at the top mark and moved into the lead up the final beat, whereas in the case of the Norwegians, they were, I'm not sure where they were. They were leading basically, and then they dropped to fourth by the second beat. So almost a reversal of fortunes for the Italians and the Norwegians. And we're on board now as the sailors change over boats. We're on board with the Royal Danish Yacht Club, the 5 women on board, skippered by Trina Paludan. Time for so you can see the changeover taking place here. This is what the rib motorboats are doing. One set of sailors jumping off, new set of sailors jumping on. So we're hoping that we get an interview with the sailors on board Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf. And I'm just going to see if they can hear me. And just...
I hear you.
Oh, fantastic. So if you could tell us your name.
My name is Cedric.
Cedric Chateau. Nice to talk to you. And thank you for facing the camera. We had your back there for a while. So tell us, what's your game plan going into these races each time? How much are you watching the races when you're sitting on board Matilda?
Oh, it's very easy. We just want to sail without looking on the ranking. Just sail safe and fast and avoid mistake, penalty turn. So we just want to sail easy without make fault on our opponent.
And what's been your best position in a Sailing Champions League event in the past?
We just practice on. We just race on National Champions League. We do second 2 years ago. We win last year, and it is the first time for me on the semis of the European Champions League.
And so how much different is the standard? Are you finding that things are all a little bit tighter and there's a little bit less room on the race course sailing at this European Championship level?
Oh yeah, very close. It's a very close level. It's very. We have to be more focused on the race, because on the national Champions League it's very how to say, very more. It's easier to make always a race in the three first place, and have you seen on our result? We have two very bad race of 7, and that's the plan is to avoid to make such races.
We saw earlier on in the day that it seemed to be paying to go to the left-hand side of the course, and then later on in the day, maybe not so much. Well, what do you think is changing there?
I don't know if there is something we change. You know, our plan is to say very easier. We want to take the start. We want to take the start at the place where there is no boats. We want to just stay fast, and I don't know if there is more wind on the right or on the left on the area, but we just want to say only with our boat at the best speed we can.
Cedric, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to us. Congratulations on your performance so far. Very solid performance by you and your crew. And we wish you the very best for the race coming up very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
So that was Cedric Chateau that was kind enough to take time out of his pre-race preparation to talk to us. Now he has to get his game face back on again, and he has to hand the microphone back. Very expensive piece of equipment without it dropping in the water. And Cedric was telling us that winning 3 races in a row at the French National League level is one thing, but there's no hope of winning 3 races in a row at this level, at the European level. Now we're on board with Trine Paludan's crew, representing Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club, the Royal Danish Yacht Club. 5 women up against the other teams, most of whom are 4 men, but as we saw on Cedric's crew just then, Cedric sails with a mixed team. So we are seeing all kinds of different makeups of different crews. But 5 women on board this team, and the last race that we saw them compete in, they won that race. I think it was their last one that we saw. So perfectly capable of winning races, and as indeed are many of the teams out here. Very evenly spread, and no one is running away with this competition right now. We've got about 4 minutes to the start of the next race. And the breeze seems like it's holding up pretty nicely. It's going to be some good J70 racing conditions. Hopefully without the big wind shifts that we saw at the start of the last race, which caused a few surprises in the last 10 or so seconds before the start of the previous race.
Well, and lots of support on social media for Club de Voile Saint Auban Elbeuf, who we've just spoken with. So nice support for them, and also the Swedish team, Mammo Segelsällskapet. So lovely to see the support online and people watching their clubs as we are into Flight 12, Race 3.
And so at the end of this flight, we'll have a much better idea of what the real standings are. It needs each of the 3 races in any given flight to have been completed before we can really get a true sense of who's at the top of the leaderboard. So this time they're aiming for the white flag tells us that they're aiming for the white windward mark. The choice of 3 windward marks, and that white flag tells the teams which mark they need to be aiming for. 2 minutes 30 to go. lovely big super yacht on the left of picture, just at the back. I don't know if that's...
Didn't realise you brought yours here.
No, I haven't. That was actually my sister's.
So we still have a pin end bias. So the opportunity for advantage off that pin end is there, and someone just practicing a little run at it there. Got a little bit of speed. Breeze, again, 9.5 knots across that course. Little bit of swell and a little bit of chop around, so easy for these boats to stop if you stall them through a manoeuvre. But you should see the boat spread out across this line. Some will start to favour that pin end. They might not commit themselves all the way down to that pin end, but they'll look to sit leeward of the pack and controlling, and you'll see them come away from that line quite early, want that speed on, but then they'll start to climb. They'll go into that high mode and start to try and shovel off those boats off towards that right-hand side. But the right is flicking back, and we are seeing more and more advantage coming from that right-hand side. The breeze got about sort of 5 to 8 degrees wind shifts across this race course. The wind speed steady, 8.5 to 9.5 sort of knots into the final minute. Now you can see boats lining up. They're starting to sit a bit further back every time, whether it's just a sort of mental judgment of where it is, whether they feel that the breeze is up a little bit more and so their acceleration could be later. But we've seen some fairly big misjudgments coming into this pin end, and certainly for this boat now, I would definitely be tacking yes and say they're tacking this boat to the right. Reason why is you're just clawing up a bit more space to the boats to windward of you. If you can sit right underneath the bow of the boats to windward of you, gives you a more controlling position off this line.
So 25 seconds to go, and will these boats have enough time on distance to be able to get a decent start? Yes, they will. And I think what Corky was just saying about there being a bit more breeze, that means the boats can accelerate more quickly, and they don't need as much time to build up to full speed. Looks like no one's going to be close enough to threaten the recall flag, and it's going to be a very even start.
So perfect start across Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf coming off this pin end. So in a controlling position, they are bow forwarders. So you can see if you were to draw that line across from them, they are bow forward on those boats. What they'll be looking to do now is keep that speed on, but slowly start to climb and try and squeeze that gap. What they'll do is put pressure on the boats. Now we start to see it. And that will start to be providing dirty air off the back of their sail, like an exhaust in a car, just kicking out that dirty air off the back of their sails, trying to force the boats above them to tack off towards the right and give them the option to tack.
We're on board with Hellerup Sail Club from Denmark, and Frederick Berg in giving instructions forwards, and they're just about to go into attack. Good smooth tack, bit of a roll tack there by the Danes. And the pin end winner, boat number 3, who we just spoke to before the race, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf, they go into attack. Cedric Chateau in a strong position, and a penalty having to be taken by one of the other boats. It's boat number 4, which is from Ubelingen. And so by the time they've rounded behind that other boat with the purple sail, that's a very expensive maneuver for the Germans, and very unfortunate for them. And taking the pressure off from Club de Voile Saint-Aubin, who have a lot of clean air around them now, and in a very strong position to take up the lead at the top end of this course. Having said that, the left-hand side, as the afternoon has worn on, has not been such a strong position. So they could be attacked from the far side. But at the moment, we're on board with Cedric Chateau and Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Elbeuf, who seem to be in a pretty strong position on the left-hand side of our screen.
Again, so we're seeing the penalties are the ones that are really mixing up this leaderboard. And just scrolling back and looking through the analytics, it was a port and starboard event again. And so considering that's the golden rule within sailing, and the first one that you teach and apply to anyone learning sailing. It's the one that's being breached the most, and what people are really trying to push at the moment in this fleet. And these penalties being costly here as we look, bottom right corner, that was...
You look at that, you look at the green trace going out to the left and compare it with the yellow trace of the leaders, and they weren't far off the lead before they took that penalty, and that's how expensive it's become. They get given the worst of whatever's remaining, which is to be handed out a very poor track on the left-hand side of the course with no tactical options left other than to follow in your rivals. So it's only going to get worse for Ubelingen from where they are right now.
It was a really nice graphic as well from these boats in the middle part of the screen now that are just back in a bit of dirty air. They were sailing half a knot slower, and that is what Marcus Bauer described with that dirty air of the coming off the back of the sails, and exactly what we're talking about. You need that clear air in a clear track. If you're getting dirty air off the back of a sail, your boat is going half a knot slower, if not possibly more. And in this sort of breeze, that's hugely costly, but a great rounding from the pin end. Again, we see them, the French rounding first, but pressure firmly on from boat number 6.
Which is WSV Giesbeek from the Netherlands. Although a bit of a sloppy finish to that hoist, and it's rather handed a bit of advantage to boat number 2. Which is Yacht Club Bregenz, one of the front runners in this regatta. And Yacht Club Bregenz, there's a penalty, there's been contact and penalty handed out, and it's going to be handed out to boat number 7, which is Burgenländischer Yacht Club from Austria. So that's not worked out well at all for the Austrians, and they're going to be way at the back by the time they get going again. And it's the Danish women that I think they had contact with. So the Danish women that won their previous race are currently second last. That's how easy it is to find yourself at either end of one of these fleets.
I've got a feeling that penalty that was handed out there was unfortunately to the Swedish team, Malmö Skekkelskapet.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So unfortunately the team with most of the fans on Facebook and throwing all their best at it, that penalty was applied there on that grey boat. But on board here, so with the French team, you can see right in for that jibe. The crew working themselves down to that clew on the Jenica to allow it to skirt round, and then a big ease and get it back out and flowing. So what you're trying to do with that Jenica out in front, the big driving down sail, is to ease it as far as possible. And you can see in this leech, sort of just where the colour is, you can see it just flapping or starting to what we call curling. So you're trying to ease it as far out as possible to make that sail as big as possible, drive the boat down to leeward so you keep it curling. But now out comes that jib. Very surely down comes that Jenica into the cockpit, through that hatch, and a very comfortable lead for one of the top boats in the leaderboard at the moment. That kite's not come all the way down though. There seems to be a problem. So we can see in the bottom corner, the kite's not come all the way down. It's flogging away. Now it starts to come. So clearly a little bit of a knot or something getting caught. But they have managed to stuff it all away. And they're on their way back up the left-hand side of the course.
And quite an even split of boats going left and right. But the leaders from Club de Voile Saint-Aubin-Aubeuf choosing to take the left-hand side of the course, which did them some favours first time round. So I guess good reason for Cedric Chateau to believe that it might work for him again. It's quite a family affair on board this boat. There's 3 people of the 4 by the name of Chateau, so good family effort by the Chateaus.
So we can see the nice tack in there from port, looking really comfortable as they truck out towards the left side. Very, very comfortable. But you see those boats out towards that right-hand side, looking for that little bit of a gain, looking for that breeze to sit in that right-hand situ. to come back. That is Yacht Club Bregenz. Hi, they were up on top, near the top of the leaderboard. For certainly some of the race, they slipped up in their last race, gaining a 6th, and so they're doing everything possible to keep themselves in the title battle. Every single point matters here. So
Yacht Club Bregenz, as you can see, certainly threatening on the right-hand side.
Their speed now just starting to build as they came out that tack. You can see it was only 4.7, so don't get worried. That's just them taking that tack and now starting to build up. Now they're up to where you'd expect 5.2, 5.3 knots. They've got a nice little bit of breeze there coming in from that right side.
Yacht Club Bregenz not quite on the ley line, so that's one glimmer of hope for the French, the yellow track, that Yacht Club Bregenz probably has more manoeuvres to do, unless they've judged that ley line correctly. And actually, as I look at this, the more and more, the closer they get, I wonder if Yacht Club Bregenz are on their final approach to the ley line, in which case the Swiss are in a strong position to take the lead from the French. So that's been a bit of a giveaway by the French. Not much they could know that was going to be the case. So it's only speaking with a great benefit of hindsight, but the French have given up the lead by going out to the left-hand side, and we have tended to think, Corky, that the right-hand side was the safer play later on in the afternoon.
Certainly over these last few races, that breeze just tracking around towards that right, staying a little bit stronger on that right, and that's handed here to the Austrians as they go round. Yacht Club Bregenz, nice and comfortable. Good set. Again, we're seeing some superb sort of teamwork on board these top boats. The kite goes out, set, bang, the team are already in place. Quick little adjustments. And there, these lead 2 boats, very comfortable. A squeeze here for Lanska Skigelsapel. Trying to punch through. It's a big stall up here.
So slow, isn't it?
But now look at the boat on the outside, taking that speed gap as they roll round the outside.
That's got to hurt, hasn't it? Hellerup Sail Club left for dead as boat number 6, which is the Italians, I think it is. So Città Canottieri Gardasella just sail right round the outside of the Danes. And the Danes are in danger of being rolled by boat number 4 now. It's just gone horribly, horribly wrong. But someone's going to cop a penalty. The chief umpire has handed out a red flag to we will find out who in a moment. What a massive lead now for the first 2 boats. Absolutely stretched away from the rest because of all that mess that took place at the windward mark behind them. Really strange manoeuvre there by the second boat, by Club de Voile Saint-Aubin. They're actually goose-winging down. So wonder what's behind the goose-wing idea. They got the mainsail flying one side of the boat and the Jenica flying the other side. And it looks like they want to sail straight down.
Again, we're just trying to shorten the distance. It's a way of shortening the distance, but you lose a little bit of speed on it. So it just seems a bit of an odd tactic. You can do it in certain breezes, and certainly if you're trying to force a position. But the distance was too great there already, so it seemed a bit of an odd one. But they've got the space, that they've got the opportunity to do so, and that's exactly what's happened out. But, you know, with that red flag that came up, that you saw the penalty, just tracking back, just trying to identify who that was. And it was Hellerup Sail Club.
Oh, so not only do they get rolled by 2 boats, but they end up copping a penalty as well. It just gets worse. And a bit of a slow jibe by the yellow boat on the left, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin, but it doesn't really matter because they've got a big gap either side of them. More importantly for Yacht Club Bregenz fans, it's a win for Yacht Club Bregenz and Max Trippolt from Austria. Very solid race by them, and in the end, quite a convincing victory, having overtaken the French, Club de Voile Saint-Aubin Elbeuf, who had been the leaders of that race and really gave away their opportunity to win after choosing the wrong side of the second beat, after going up the left-hand side of the course. And then we have to go a long way back before we see the next boats because of all that mess that we saw at the top end of the mark, and the one that poor old Hellerup Sail Club came off the worst end of. So boat number 8 goes across, and that's the Finnish team. Alanska Segelsalskapet, skippered by Daniel Mattsson. And let's see if it will be boat number 6 that crosses next. That would be Societa Canottieri Garda Salo. And we're on board with the Danish women representing Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club, the Royal Danish Yacht Club. So it was the Italians that crossed in 4th place, followed by boat number 4 in 5th place, Ubelingen.
A lot of the boats, as the ladies just crossed there, you can see it just as I mentioned it. The back of the mainsail getting caught on the backstay, so people just not releasing that. And again, you can see the top batten not popping here as the boat crosses the line. So either a few sort of mistakes starting to creep in, or just either a fed-upness of being where they are in this this race.
Yeah, there's a lack of attention to detail, which at this end of a long afternoon maybe is understandable. So it has been a long day, and we are going to be wrapping up the commentary fairly soon. Now, when we have a leaderboard, we will find out just what the implications of that were. So we saw Club de Voile Saint-Aubin give up the lead and finish 2nd in that race. So, Corky, what effect has that had on their overall standings?
Well, there you can see sort of in 2nd place, but look how tight the top 3 are. There is only that point separating from 2nd and 3rd to 1st. And so every single point matters, and that's it. There are no discards. It shows how tight they are. And you throw in a race, a 6 or an 8, and that's exactly what Yacht Club Bregenz did in that, not the flight we've just seen, the penultimate flight with a 6. And so if they had carried through their normal form of 1st, 2nd or 3rd, they would still be sat at the top of this table. So it shows how quickly one bad race can change the table round. But superb racing going on from these top few boats that have stayed fairly consistent, and we're seeing them very comfortably at that front, but no way is this podium confirmed.
And that overtake in the last race was really a 2-point overtake, wasn't it? When you see that it was Yacht Club Bregenz that managed to overturn Club de Voile Saint-Aubin and now put them on absolutely equal points. So it goes to show just how important that passing manoeuvre turned out to be. And then further down, Royal Danish Yacht Club, I'm going to single them out because they are the only all-female team here. They won their previous race. They finished a bit disappointing 6th in that race, but at least they're still on the top part of the leaderboard. Let's scroll down to the bottom part of the leaderboard and look at who's on the cusp of that all-important 14th place. Corky, just remind us why number 14 and how's it looking, because it's looking tight, isn't it?
So 14, so again, this is the first semi-final. So there is another semi-final with another number of boats all racing in St. Petersburg, and it's trying to qualify through to the final in St. Moritz. And so the 14th place Yacht Club at Monaco, DNF sort of being put in force there. And it made me wonder whether there was a penalty applied in one of those races and whether they took the actual penalty or not, and that's what's been applied. Well, but you can see how tight they are again, from 11th place at 51 points all the way down to 16th place in 53. So there's not a lot of breathing space, and so again, some fantastic battles going on across the whole leaderboard.
And interesting to see that down in 18th place, Moss Seilforening from Norway earlier in the day, a first and a second from some of their races. So they're perfectly capable of being right up there, and yet they find themselves 3rd from the bottom. So there are no dummies in this fleet. Everyone has an opportunity to win races, but equally they also have an opportunity to finish last. And another one to single out is the boat in 14th, Yacht Club de Monaco, really high quality team, Olympic representatives for France sailing on board that boat. And in their last 4 races, they've got 2 firsts, they've got a 3rd, and they got a did not finish. So, so sorry, we should have remembered the bottom 2. And so some of the newcomers to the Sailing Champions League from Lithuania and Slovenia bringing up the rear. It's been a very hard-fought day. It's been a very open race course. I don't know how much the SAP analytics would have brought that out. But what feedback are you getting from Facebook, Corky? What's the
well, there's obviously been a good charge of people showing their support for their teams, a huge support for the Swedish teams and the French team, which is great, and it's really important. These guys have competed in their national leagues to earn their rights to be able to come to the semi-final, and now this is just the stepping stone to get to the final. This is by no means, we could see Yacht Club Monaco, for instance, sitting in 14th place, secure their place to the final, but then still win the final. And so this is just a stepping stone to it. And so with the use of the analytics, it's phenomenal in the way of being able to depict what's going on with the racing, be able to see what we're seeing on the race course, from speeds to manoeuvres to differences, and replay those races. And that's what a lot of the sailors will do. They'll come off the water, head to sapsailing.com, they'll grab a drink, find a nice shady spot, and they'll look at some of the races to where it didn't go wrong. What happened in a race? Why did they lose? Was it a speed difference? Was it a wind shift? And that will get that from sapsailing.com. And again, any of you watching or listening in, then you can head there as well. And also keep track of all the news, the highlight clips, and get some more action from facebook.com/sailingcl.
Well, that brings to an end our coverage of the penultimate day of the semi-final number 1 here in Porto Cervo of the Sailing Champions League. My name's Andy Rice, and I've been had the great pleasure of commentating alongside my good mate Corky Rhodes. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you back tomorrow at midday when we do commentary of the final day here in Porto Cervo.